Думилам. Здравствуйте. Hello, dear participants of the project Russian Language in Africa, the way of friendship and cooperation. Alpha Dialogue Center for Additional Professional Education from St. Petersburg, Russia welcomes you. Our international project has been running for several months, and we are glad that the face-to-face stage of the project is taking place in the Republic of Botswana. The project is supported by the Ministry of Education of the Russian Federation. My name is Valeria, and I am happy to present our team. Marina Bogdanova, Natalia Nikola, Natalia, and Oleg Mukovsky. Also, we're happy to greet our team members that will join us online today. Alexander Zheltov and Olga Kulikova.
So our center, the Alpha Dialogue Center, is a non-profit educational organization that implements educational and cultural projects for children and adults. We have several fields of work, and one of them is promotion of Russian language and culture abroad, as well as training courses, conferences, and so on. So this is our third project in Africa. The first was in Tanzania 2 years ago, and last year we had a project in Zambia. And we're really happy to be in Botswana and Madagascar this year. Yeah.
First of all, thanks for coming. Thanks for joining us in this project. What are we going to have today and tomorrow? We'll have classes. You'll hear and see classes on Russian language and culture, Russian literature and music, Russia-Africa economic relations, the history and modern state of African studies in Russia, and a lot more. At the end of tomorrow, we'll get a certificate of participation issued by the Alpha Dialogue Center, and that's important, the Ministry of Education of the Russian Federation. It's an official certificate. At the end of the day, today, we suggest that we take our group photo, because maybe in this room, because it's cool and nice here, and the light here is excellent, and we'll have also their group photo tomorrow. But now, without much ado, we'll begin our project, and I invite Dr. Natalia Nikola, a distinguished Russian teacher of Russian as a foreign language. She has worked in many universities in Russia and abroad. So we start.
Hello, everybody. Здравствуйте. Well, dear students, I'm your new teacher. My name is Natalia, and I will teach you some Russian, because today we start speaking Russian, and I will give you also some homework. And tomorrow, yes, first, tomorrow you will show me how great you can speak Russian, some very important phrases. Okay, let's start. Let's start. Now, just a couple of words about myself. I've been teaching Russian for, let's say, 15 years now. And I have students from all over the world, from America, USA, Canada, from Japan, China, from many European countries, from some countries of Africa, but I've never had any student from Botswana. So I'm really happy that now this is my group from Botswana. I'm really happy to be here in your country. It's really more country with more welcome, especially considering that now in Russia we have snow, like that much of snow. Yes, I saw a video yesterday that people in our central square were walking like that. So now I'm feeling happy because I was swimming in the swimming pool yesterday. Okay, so let's start. For today, I will give you some important phrases. I will say them aloud, and I kindly ask you to please repeat after me so that you will practice, okay? Of course, you see that we have some different alphabet, and it's written a little bit differently. We will have some words about our alphabet, but for your help, I gave you those blue writings. They will show you how to read these words for now, okay? So, and I'll try to show you two situations because in our life, we usually are in two situations, like formal communication and informal communication with our friends. So if you meet somebody for the first time, you should know how to say, to greet people formally. And if you know them, or if you consider them friends, you should know the other form to greet them informally. So for today, we will have those two columns. Yes, and you will see two forms. Sometimes it's very simple, not the big difference. Okay, let's start. Of course, the first thing we would do is to greet someone. And the form is a little bit long. I think it's longer than in many languages. So the first form is здравствуйте. Здравствуйте. Yeah. Здравствуйте. Okay. Yeah, again. That's a great. Yeah. You know, it's long because we wish you some health. This word means I wish you health. Здравствуйте. And the one is and if it's easier, say привет. Привет. Now, of course, we not just say привет to our friends because we want to show them how happy we are to see them. We usually do like this. Привет, привет. So again, здравствуйте. Привет, привет. Now a couple of words about our alphabet. Yeah, it's tough because it's not like Latin alphabet. It's a little bit different. And what is even more difficult that some letters look similar, but we pronounce them differently. Yeah, some tricky situations. But some just maybe 5 letters are the same. For example, T, K, or T, T will look almost the same. You have the alphabet in your brochures. Yeah, and you can have a look at it. Yes, and also, of course, it takes some time to learn that alphabet because it's a little bit different. So if you want, if you are interested, you can do it yourself. We have a number of video classes, and there's one class with recorded alphabet, and letter by letter, teachers will explain how to pronounce these letters, how to combine them in words, and how to read those words. So if you are interested, anytime you want, I recommend you or encourage you to try these classes that we have online, video recorded classes, yes. And maybe by tomorrow somebody will learn Russian alphabet. Maybe, I don't know. Or at least you can try, yes. So here I showed you just a part of it. And some letters here. Yes. You see them familiar, yes, like in English, but we pronounce them differently, as I said. For example, the first one is not B, it's V. V, yeah. And for example, you will find this letter in the name of our capital, Moskva. It's not Moskva, it's Moskva. Moskva. Another one may be familiar, yes, the C letter. In Russian, it's always S, only S, never K. Yeah, only S. For example, this word text. In Russian, text, text. Very similar, text. Okay, another one is N. It's not H, it's N. And for my name, which is Natalia, it's important because when I write my name in Russian, I start with this one, and in Latin, it's different. Okay, and the word is there that I'm sure you know, internet. Internet, the same in Russian, internet. Okay, and another one is R. It's not P. For example, this one there is restaurant. Restaurant. There's R, S, and N. Restaurant. So it looks like in Latin, yeah, but it's completely different. And the last one would be H. H. Характер. Характер. Yeah, I know that in the beginning for most students it's a little bit confusing and they need some time to get used to that, but they finally manage. It's actually not that difficult and they speak Russian better. Okay, and also we have some unique, interesting letters. You see them there. The first one is very interesting. When we teach our children at school, we say that this letter looks like a bug, you know, a bug with legs, an insect, yes, and the sound is also similar to the sound that an insect makes. Yeah, so the letter is zh, yeah. For example, the profession, the journalist, starts with Russian zh and sounds like journalist. Journalist. Yeah, some use important. Journalist. Okay. And there's another one. For example, the word машина. Машина is a car. Okay. The other one looks even more weird. It's like the previous, but with some tail. Yes. There's a little technical mistake because this letter here is how we pronounce this. Oh, sorry. This one is for this letter. So sh and sh. Yeah, it's very interesting sound. And for example, we use it not very often, maybe, yes, but in a very important Russian soup from a beetroot that is called borscht. Borscht, yes. If you come to Russia, just try this soup because everybody knows it. Okay, and we have ts, like center, the center. Yes. And the last one would be ch. For example, the football match would be match. Yeah, I'm just showing you some examples. Yes, we're not learning the whole alphabet. You will do it if you want online. Okay. So what I want to say is that if you learn this alphabet and you will be able to write your name in Cyrillic letters, you will definitely surprise your friends. So maybe it's just for that sake, it's worth it. Okay. And now I have a little practice for you. You can open the alphabet. And I hope that everybody got that. And we'll try to read the name of the chocolate. So yeah, you see this girl, and it's actually her name written. So we want to know what's her name. The first letter is A. The second, L. Okay, the third one is very interesting. It's Yo. Yo. So for now we have what? Alo, right? Okay, let's proceed. N, K, A. So who can guess the name of the girl? Alyonka, right, Alyonka. So her name is Alyonka, as a name of girl, Alyona, and for children we would say Alyonka. Actually, it's very interesting about that letter. Your here with two dots. Yes, we love this letter, and we even have a monument to this letter in one of the cities. But we rarely write it like that. Mostly in our books, we write it without those two dots, and it's similar to another one. Okay, that was some information for you. Now let's start actually talking. So you know already how to say hello formally, здравствуйте, informally, привет, yes? But of course we have other ways to say, and many people were saying morning, yes, morning today. And since we still have morning in Russian, it's утро. We can also say доброе утро. Доброе утро. Okay. Yeah, it means a kind morning to you. Well, we will definitely stay here till the midday, and then we would use another form, добрый день. Добрый день, right? День is day. Добрый день. Okay, and maybe starting from 5 p.m. we will start saying the other one, добрый вечер. Yeah, very good. So again, доброе утро, добрый день, добрый вечер. Okay, very well. You maybe someone wants to try.
Доброе утро.
Добрый день.
Доброе утро.
Thank you. Спасибо. Oh, you know Russian. I know what I'm doing here. Okay. Now, next step would be to know your names, of course. Let's get acquainted. Давайте познакомимся. Давайте познакомимся. And again, I'm giving you two forms, the formal one and informal. You see it's not a big difference, just one word would be different. The first form, we ask about name. Ask about name formally. Как вас зовут? Okay, как вас зовут? Вас is the form that is showing us this formal situation because it's a polite form. Зовут is actually a verb, call. So how are you called? Как вас зовут? For example, if you meet some people and they're maybe looking a little bit elder than you, or it's a formal situation, we should use this form. For younger people of the same age, they would start their conversation informally. And that form sounds как тебя зовут? Yes, right. Как тебя. So the difference, как вас зовут, как тебя зовут. Okay, now we know how to respond. If it's a formal situation, you would hear a longer name, and I'll explain you in a minute why. So, for example, it's my name. Меня зовут Наталья Евгеньевна. Yes, you don't need to repeat my name. Just меня зовут. This form is important for you. Yeah. Okay. And if I'm talking to somebody of my age, and I'm sure that we are very informal, so I would say «Меня зовут Наталья», or «Меня зовут Наташа». Oh, nice to meet you. We have two forms, just like I have Natalia and Natasha. It's for friends, maybe. Natasha is more often used, but anyway. So why I was saying this longer version in the first form? Because we really respect our fathers. And since I'm Natalia Evgenievna, it means that my father's name is Evgeny. Evgeny. Yes. And I'm saying my name, my patronymic name, so it's the form of my father's name. And it's for females, Evgenievna, for example. If I would have a husband and a brother, so if I would have a brother, he would be Evgenievich. Evgenievich, yes. I'm Evgenievna, and he would be Evgenievich. Yes. So when Russians hear this patronymic name, they already know father's name, father's name. And of course, the surname also say. I'll show you some examples with another person and some other forms of patronymic name. Yeah, so here's another example. Okay, somebody's name is a woman, her name is Olga. And so her patronymic name is Petrovna. And now we can understand that her father's name is Piotr. Piotr. That's why she's Petrovna. And her surname is Ivanova. Okay, and there is a man. His name is Victor. And his father's name is also Piotr. So it's a brother and a sister. No, they have different surnames. No, they're just different people. Okay. So he is Petrovich. Petrovich. Yeah. My students from different countries, they usually like to, create their patronymic names in Russian way, and they have this fun. For example, with somebody who has the name John, their father's name is John. Yes, a girl would say, "I'm Johnovna," and the boy would say, "I'm Johnovich." Yeah, you can try and invent your own patronymic name. Just take your father's name, and for boys you will use Vich. For girls you should use Na. Yes. Yeah, yeah. So anybody wants to try and say their patronymic name in Russian? So maybe you. Do you want to try? What's your father's name? Oh, yeah, you're John of Na. John of Na. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay. So now we will try to show you some dialogues. Yeah, some situations of like real talk. And I'm asking my colleague to help me. So we will read for you this dialogue.
Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Как вас зовут?
Меня зовут Ольга Петровна, а вас?
Меня зовут Виктор Петрович.
Очень приятно.
И мне очень приятно.
So, here we have this about some phrases, how to say nice to meet you. Очень приятно. Literally it means very pleased. Очень приятно. Yeah. Okay, let's do another one with our real names. Okay, so.
Здравствуйте.
Здравствуйте.
Как вас зовут?
Меня зовут Наталья Евгеньевна, а вас?
Меня зовут Олег Леонидович.
Очень приятно.
И мне очень приятно.
So that's. Okay, now it's like we are 15 years old. Okay?
Привет.
Привет.
Как тебя зовут?
Меня зовут Ольга. А тебя?
А меня зовут Виктор.
Yeah, that's it. Let's do it again with our real names.
Привет,
Привет,
как тебя зовут?
меня зовут Наташа, а тебя?
Меня зовут Олег.
Круто. So maybe somebody wants to go here and come here and try. Yes, please. We have volunteers. Great. So guys, please stand here and then we'll be online. Yeah. Do you need some help? Do you need these brochures with writing? Here?
Yeah.
What do you prefer, like formal or informal? Informal. Okay.
Yeah, always. Доброе утро.
Привет.
Как вас зовут?
Меня зовут Екатерина.
Я зовут Габор.
Меня зовут Екатерина, а вас?
Я. Здравствуйте.
Хорошо.
Очень приятно.
Очень приятно.
Очень приятно.
Спасибо.
You're great.
Отлично.
So we have this patient and it sounds like that. And practice that so that when we have our break or tea party, we can try, yes, and to say Russian and ask for the name and answer what's your name. So again, как вас зовут? Меня зовут Наталья Евгеньевна. Как вас зовут? Как вас зовут? Как вас зовут? Great, great. А как вас зовут? Okay, thank you. Somebody from that side, okay? Как вас зовут? Здравствуйте.
Меня зовут Игорь.
Очень приятно. А как вас зовут? Меня зовут. And just your name. Меня зовут. Меня зовут. Очень приятно. Спасибо. Thank you. Okay, we'll go next. Yes, I'm sure that you need some time to get used to it. Okay. Yes, practice when you want. So some information for you, but for now we will mostly need only one, our personal pronouns in Russian. So I'll read it for you, just repeat after me, and we'll remember just the first one. Okay, so the first would be yeah. Second is ты. Он, она. Вы. Они. Yes. So what's interesting here that we have two forms of you. One form is informal, that's ты, for friends. And other one we use in two ways. First, if you see it written with the capital letter, it's a formal indication of one person, very quiet. Remember the phrase как вас is the form of вы and is written with capital letter. It means that there's only one person, but we are saying polite. And if it's written like this, it means that there are like two and more people. It's collective form. And it may be both sexual and informal. Вы, like one person, and we, like a group of people. Yes. Я, ты, он, она, мы, вы, они. Очень хорошо, very good, thank you. Спасибо. So another thing I'll just quickly mention as an information for you, because sometimes you will see that we write some letters like different and we pronounce them the same way. Like for example, она, они, because we write O, like on, but we say она, not ona. We say она. Yeah, it happens because we have stress in Russian, and this stress is traveling. And in those books for the beginners, when you start learning Russian, all words have this stress. They show you how to stress the word. And if you have a vowel, and vowels in your alphabet are in red color, some of them change. Yeah, some of them change. You don't need to learn it for now, just information for you. So the letter O, and many times if it's not stressed, we say it like ah. So that's why it's ana. And also ani. Yes. Okay, so for now, just remember the first one. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yes. Ты. Он, она. Они. Yes, that's good. Some homework for you. Yes, sure. Yes. Tomorrow we will have some tea. Yes. And we'll learn some words, and you will have a lot of time to learn those words for tomorrow, and you will try to use them. The first is the instructions to say what's this. You will learn it, and you will ask about just anything. So, что это? Что это? Что это? Что это? Это телефон. Что это? Это компьютер. Что это? Это шоколад. Yes, so this question we practice for like 2 lessons when we have real studies, like asking what's this and who's this, and just using pictures. So, что это? And the second word there is chai. Chai. It's tea. Chai. Yes. So, что это? Это чай. Это чай. And there you have the verb to drink. To drink. Пить. Пить. Пить чай. Пить чай. Yes. To drink. To drink tea. Пить чай. You will see coffee on the next slide, but it's very similar. Coffee. Coffee. Пить чай. Пить кофе. And что это? Это шоколад. Шоколад. Yeah. We will eat chocolate. In Russian, to eat is есть. Есть шоколад. Yeah. So tomorrow we will пить чай и есть шоколад. Чай и шоколад. Maybe it's a little bit small, but I will read for you. So let's, давайте пить чай или кофе. Давайте пить чай или кофе. Let's drink tea or coffee. And there's the phrase what I'm doing. In Russian, we have the same form of I'm drinking now, and I drink in general, like I like to drink. So this form sounds like я пью чай. Я пью чай. Yeah, we change words. Verb. Пить is the infinitive. Пью is for me. Я пью чай. This is a very good student here. You already have an A. Okay, so for the chocolate, we will say the form to eat from I. Я ем шоколад. Я ем шоколад. So tomorrow you'll be able to say я пью чай or coffee или кофе и ем шоколад. Очень хорошо, very good. Okay, and then you will hear the question, tea or coffee? Чай или кофе? Чай или кофе? And you will respond, whatever you choose, right? And of course, we want to be polite. So we often use this word, пожалуйста. Пожалуйста. Please. Yeah. Пожалуйста. Okay, very well. So if you hear the question, чай или кофе, you may say, чай, пожалуйста. Чай, пожалуйста. Actually, if you say them in different ways, it's the same. Пожалуйста, чай is the same. Пожалуйста, чай. Or if you choose coffee, you will say кофе, пожалуйста. Пожалуйста, кофе. Okay, now we will see who likes tea and who likes coffee. I will ask you the question, and you will say this one or this one. Okay? I'm repeating for you again. Чай, пожалуйста. Кофе, пожалуйста. So yeah, let's try to hear what's more popular, tea or coffee. Okay, so dear friends, чай или кофе? I think that tea is more popular, right? Wow, great, I also prefer tea. Yeah, in Russia, we really like to drink tea. It's part of our culture. If you have a look at our pictures, sometimes paintings, you will see a lot of them when there's a person drinking tea. So it would be great to see you tomorrow and the tea drinking party. And the last word here, which is also very important to know, is thank you. In Russian, спасибо. 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 This one is easy. Okay, so we can form a little dialogue here. For example, чай или кофе. Чай, пожалуйста. Here, спасибо. Try to use these words. Try to use these words, especially tomorrow. Okay, and so one more teasing information for you, because in every country people have their own sweets. Yes, chocolate is very universal, of course. Chocolate, yeah. Another student got an A. Okay, so something we really like in Russia, and maybe you don't know what this is, or maybe somebody knows. Anybody knows what is it? It's a very popular and spread Russian sweet for tea, and it's called пряник. Пряник. It's a little bit similar to gingerbread because we make it with some similar ingredients, but it's not, flat. It's more bigger, and sometimes it has jam inside, and maybe chocolate, vanilla, So if you come to our tea party tomorrow, you will try pryanik. Yeah. Yes, and I invite you to come tomorrow to our tea drinking party. Yes. And so I would like to say to you, spasiba. Thank you, my dear students.
Спасибо большое, Наталья Евгеньевна. So we're switching to the next speaker, Olga Sergeyevna Kulkova. Just let us a few minutes to change the picture. All right, just a moment. Olga Sergeyevna, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just
welcome.
a moment. I'll change the picture here in our hall.
Shall I start the demonstration of my presentation?
You can start the demonstration now. So,
Just a second.
yeah, it's a picture we can bring here our big. Yeah. We also have a live stream now on YouTube. You can share it with your friends if you want, and they can see you. So we couldn't bring the whole team of our center to in Botswana, obviously, but we would like you to know more from different specialists in different fields. So I would like you to meet Olga Kulkova, Senior Research Fellow of the Center for the Study of the Russian-African Relations and African States Foreign Policy at the Institute for African Studies of the Russian Academy of Science. So, Olga Sergeyevna, you can make the move.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is everything okay with the presentation?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay,
and
great.
everyone sees and can hear you. So we give you the word and we hear. And if you have questions, we will answer them.
Dear participants of the Russia-African Cultural Dialogue, today I'm very happy to greet all of you and to present some of my thoughts upon the topic Russia-Africa economic cooperation and business ties. I would very much like to be there with you in person, but unfortunately, due to my previous arrangements, I could not go to Botswana, but I'm happy to be with you in this online format. And also, I would like to mention that I'm not an economist, I'm a historian, but I will try to share with you the best expert knowledge upon these economic and business topics that I gained from various authoritative sources and from my colleagues and from my own thinking. Thank you so much. And now let us proceed with the presentation. So first, I would like to tell you about Russia as an economic player today. In general, we all know that Russia is now under some Western sanctions, but we see that sanctions restrictions are being overcome more easily than it was earlier predicted, and Russian exports are quite successfully redirected to many other directions, primarily to Asia, to India and China, but not only these directions. And according to the Rosstat, Russian Statistical Agency, Russia's GDP in last year decreased by 2.1%. During the pandemic, for example, it was 2.7, but this decrease was expected by the Russian government, and it was even less than predicted by our agencies. And the results were better, largely due to increased government spending, higher performance in the oil and gas sector, construction, and agriculture. Also, the International Monetary Fund has improved its forecast for the Russian economic growth by the end of 2023. This follows from the updated report published on their website in October. So the fund expects Russia's GDP to increase by 2.2%, which is 0.7 percentage points higher than in July. And also, the Russian President Vladimir Putin said at the meeting of the Valdai Club in Sochi in October 2023 that Russian economy this year will grow at the range of 2.8 or maybe even 3%. And for our economy, for that economic structure that Russia has, it is a very good result. As President mentioned, we have completely overcome the decline of last year, which I was talking about earlier, and now we are picking up the pace. Also, Russia is one of the major grain and fertilizers exporter in the world. Grain is very important as well as fertilizers, without which not only food consuming countries but also food producing countries could be at risk of famine. By the way, food security became one of the top priorities at the second Russia-Africa summit this year in summer in St. Petersburg. Russian President Vladimir Putin in October this year said that Russia will most likely retain first place in the world in wheat exports. And last year, we had a historically record grain harvest. It was 158 million tons. This year, it will also be large, more than 130 million tons. And this means that we have a very large export potential, and we will export from 50 to 60 million tons of grain. And recently, in November, the first Russia's free grain supplies to Africa started. They were announced at the second Russia-Africa summit this summer in Petersburg. President Putin announced his readiness to supply African countries with free supplies from 25 to 50,000 tons. And already grain delivery is also free for recipients. Supplies are intended to Burkina Faso, Zimbabwe, Mali, Somalia, Central African Republic, and Eritrea. And first ships with the grain have already departed to Somalia and Burkina Faso. Expectedly, they will arrive at the end of November, beginning of December this year. And by the end of the year, the total volume of supplies is expected to be up to 200,000 tons. So very soon, the ships to Central African Republic, Zimbabwe, Mali, and Eritrea will be loaded and sent to these countries by the end of the year. Also, Russia has been actively developing commercial grain supplies to Africa, and major buyers include Algeria, Tanzania, Senegal, Morocco, and a number of other countries. Now about the African continent as an economic player today, how we see that in Russia. Africa is not without the reason called the continent of the future, because it is a large emerging market brought together by the African Continental Free Trade Area project. And we know that in Africa there is a growing and predominantly young population, which according to the UN forecasts will double by 2050 and will become 2.4 billion people. And by the end of this century, about a third of all humanity will live on the African continent. Also, Africa is rich in raw materials which are critical for the whole world, not only for Russia, because some of these raw materials are crucial for the development of high technologies. And Africa is a home to enormous natural treasures. Half of the world's diamonds are mined there. The largest volumes of cobalt, uranium, and manganese are mined there. And since 2000, more large oil fields have been discovered on the continent than anywhere else. And now I would like you to have a look at this slide where we see the growth projections of the IMF by the region. And we see that sub-Saharan Africa, in comparison to the world economic base, and even to the United States and to the Euro area, sub-Saharan Africa is showing a much higher pace of economic growth. In 2022, it was 4%. The estimates for this year is 3.3, and the next year is also 4%. So we see that Africa is showing good pace of economic growth, but still, according to IMF, there is slight decrease from the previous estimates, and this projected decline in some cases is due to worsening weather shocks, the global slowdown, domestic supply issues in several countries, including notably in the electricity sector. But still, we know that a number of African countries, African lions, as we call them, they are rapidly developing economies. For example, in general, South Africa, Botswana, Ethiopia, Nigeria, Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Ghana, Mauritius, Rwanda, Namibia, Tanzania, Kenya, and some of the countries in 2021 and 2022 showed particular successes in economic development. Ethiopia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Niger, Zimbabwe, Rwanda, Mauritius, Benin, and some others. GDP growth rates were significantly higher than 5%. Now, Russia, Botswana. I would like to say what we remark about Russia, Botswana, probably more about Botswana economic example. Scientists have noted there is a tendency generally that natural resources often do not stimulate, but rather hinder the development of countries' economies, which is known as the resource curse. But Botswana managed to avoid this resource curse. It is an excellent example of a country which is richly endowed in terms of mineral resources, which, thanks to excellent economic governance, has managed to avoid this so-called resource curse. If we remember at the times of independence in 1966, Botswana was one of the poorest countries in the world. The basis of its trade was beef. The former colony had only 12 kilometers of roads, about 100 high school graduates, and the GDP per capita that was half the average in sub-Saharan Africa. But everything changed in 1967 when diamond mining company De Beers discovered a large deposit in the country, and now Botswana is the world's second largest diamond miner after Russia. 95% of these diamonds are mined by the company Botswana, which is a joint venture between De Beers and the Botswana government, and each party, as we know, owns 50%. According to the De Beers estimates, about 80 cents of every dollar Botswana earns in Botswana goes into government coffers. And from 1975 to 1995, Botswana's GDP, which came from diamond sales, grew at an average annual rate of cosmic 9.3%. Today, The average income of a Botswana resident is one of the highest on the entire African mainland. By 2020, GDP per capita amounted to $6.4 thousand. But of course, presence of diamonds alone was not enough for such an economic miracle, and the strategically calibrated economic policy helped here there. The fruitful economic decisions of the government, according to our specialists, they mention accumulation of foreign currency, mineral tax policy, investment in physical infrastructure, investment in human capital, attraction of expatriate expats, and others. And it is important to mention that education in Botswana accounts for 7 to 8% of GDP, which is one of the highest in the world. And although Botswana has not been able to diversify its export much, as diamonds remain the main export good, Botswana has invested in future sources of wealth, such as diamond cutting and polishing technology, which has borne rich fruit. And also, the country is famous for its political stability, compliance with laws, well-functioning governance institutions, and an open business climate which attracts investors. Now, Botswana is one of the top 5 most attractive investment destinations in Africa. And this, of course, is very impressive and shows a good example that Africa is really a leader in the development in many areas. It shows good example to other continents and even to other countries, shows some good practices that can be looked at and learned from. So now, returning back to Russia-Africa economic relations in general, I would like to say that there is a solid political background for the boost in economic cooperation in recent years. We all know that in 2019 there happened the first historic Russia-Africa summit, first ever, and in this year happened the second Russia-Africa summit, also long prepared, and both of them gave strong impetus to the development of Russian-African political, trade, and economic ties. I think this happens because both Russia and African countries are interested in a reliable, mutually beneficial, fair, and long-standing partnership. And this is what both sides can offer to each African countries represent a significant force in a number of international forums and organizations, including economic ones. Their voice is becoming more and more audible. African countries show good pace of economic development in many cases, and in many African countries, there's a friendly friendly attitude towards our country, which we value very much. And as a Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov formulated in his article in last year, we proceed from the fact that Russian-African relations, be they political, humanitarian, or trade and investment ones, are of intrinsic nature and do not depend on the international situation. I'm glad that our African friends also share a similar understanding. Together we will only be stronger, he said. Now to the key figures of the Russian-African trade that we need to take into account. In recent years, generally, Russia-African trade turnover and economic cooperation were on the rise. And according to the Ministry of Economic Development of our country, Russia's foreign trade turnover with African countries in 2022 amounted to about $18 billion. And as of November 2023, it is already around $19 billion. And up to $20 billion are accumulated Russian investments in the African countries. Of course, this trade turnover is far from the potential that this this economic cooperation has. So it is a must for our country to do the most to develop this trade and economic cooperation to its maximum potential, and this work is being done. Up to 25% of Russian supplies to the African market came from wheat and muslin, and another 22% from oil and petroleum products. The Ministry of Economic Development made an analysis of promising product niches in the African market, and it showed that by 2030, Russia and Africa can at least double their trade turnover figures. Of course, for this, it is necessary to do a lot to intensify joint efforts to strengthen bilateral cooperation, increase expertise, reconfigure support tools, provide additional resources to our development and economic institutions. Now about the Russian companies' presence on the African continent, I'd like to say a few words. So the presence of Russian companies in the African markets is developing, and exploration of these markets is one of the most promising tasks for Russian businesses. By now, many large Russian companies operate in African countries. Between 60 and 70% of Russian investment goes into exploration and production of oil, gas, uranium, bauxite, diamonds, iron ore, and other minerals. About 30 Russian companies work in this area, but not exclusively in these areas, and I will give examples later. There are quite a lot of niches on the African continent where traditional players have not yet established a foothold, so Russian entrepreneurs have every opportunity to create long-term, mutually beneficial ties with potential partners in African countries. For example, as of summer 2023, there are Rosatom's activities in Ethiopia on nuclear projects. Rosatom is also building a nuclear power plant in Egypt. A Russian company Transmash Holding works in Egypt. The project has begun. In Egypt, Russian businesses have begun to fill the Russian industrial zone. This is a special space organized by Russia in connection with the government of Egypt, which gives very beneficial conditions. But Russia would like to exploit it not only by Russian companies, but also from enterprises from the Eurasian Economic Union, so that they can also participate there. And this Russian industrial zone is an entry point. Those who will organize production of their goods there will produce and promote their products throughout whole Africa, because there is a free zone, free trade zone. This project is coming implemented throughout the continent. In Sudan, Geology is conducting geological exploration projects. And there are plans for other countries. And also Russian IT companies such as Yandex and Kaspersky also appeared on the African continent and started their work. Also, about plans to strengthen Russia-Africa business ties. First of all, there is a roadmap developed by the specialists from the Ministry of Economic Development of the Russian Federation. It was based on proposals from relevant ministries and departments. And the document defines joint activities between Russia and African countries in key areas of cooperation, such as industry, finance and banking, education, transport, agriculture and fisheries, healthcare, information and communication technologies, and the media. Measures are taken to expand the geographical coverage of the system of diplomatic and trade missions of Russia in African continents, as well as deepening cooperation within the framework of Russian-African intergovernmental commissions. So about the existing formats of economic cooperation between Russia and Africa. On the African continent, there are now 4 trade missions of the Russian Federation, which cover 9 countries: Algeria, Egypt, Morocco, South Africa, Namibia, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Senegal, and Sierra Leone. And active work now is underway to expand their number, expand their presence and activities. Also, we have 17 intergovernmental commissions with African countries on trade, economic, scientific, and technical cooperation. And in December last year, an agreement on the establishment of this such commission was signed with Tanzania. Negotiations are also going to create such commissions with Cameroon, Kenya, and Senegal. I think this process will go until we'll have such intergovernmental commissions with all African countries. Also, we have a Russian Chamber of Commerce and Industry of the Russian Federation, and they have various business councils, for example, Russia Angola, Russia South Africa, Russia Nigeria, and the more overarching coordinating committee for economic cooperation with African countries, AFRICOM. And its leader is chairman of AFRICOM. He mentioned in his recent interview that the second Russia-Africa summit in St. Petersburg made a real impetus to Russian business to develop in the African continent. So over the course of 4 years since the last summit, Russian entrepreneurs, they carefully studied the possibilities of working in Africa, and also African countries were creating in recent years quite productive conditions for foreign businesses. And now Russian entrepreneurs would like to export their products to Africa and also localize production. First of all, they look at the Ethiopia, Morocco, Djibouti, Uganda, Nigeria, but also to many other countries. What he also said is that, in his opinion, the wave of Russian companies that have moved towards doing business in Africa, it cannot stop. It cannot be stopped. Even though Russian companies still encounter some problems, they have their own strengths and weaknesses, but at least they show sincere desire to do business in Africa, and they're trying. And also, AFRICOM serves as a consulting company. For example, the company has several large Russian corporations to Nigeria. They have recently had negotiations on investments in lithium mining, bitumen production, and solar energy. Also, there are negotiations on participations in the digital transformation in Nigeria and Tanzania at an advanced stage. And in Nigeria, there was created a mineral resources research center. Also, there is an office in Ethiopia, which is successfully operating. Okay, another format I would like to mention is the created several years ago, the Association of Economic Cooperation with African States, AECOS. It promotes Russian business on the African continent with the support of expert community research institutes, and it brings together the key companies, government agencies, and scientific institutions to implement ambitious investment projects. And the numerous world-renowned companies that are interested in Russian-African cooperation have already joined it. Some of these companies in the list are Rosatom, Fosagra, and many others. So here, this slide, I gave the website, the contacts. So many businessmen, African businessmen who are interested, they could also use this contact, I suppose. What else should we mention? Economic cooperation between the African Union and Eurasian Economic Union. So this is institutional partnership that is developing in recent years, and also impetus was given by the Russia-Africa summits. As the director of one of the departments of the African Union Commission, Steve Patrick Lalande, mentioned at the last summit that this Eurasian Economic Union and Africa have significant potential to create various opportunities to level the playing field for mutual trade and cooperation. They will become fairer and create a new order that will respect sovereignty and common values and be mutually beneficial. Also, he mentioned there is huge potential for cooperation in such sectors as digital transformation, trade, and also green economy. And he mentioned that we could cooperate more, creating various cooperation mechanisms. Also, Sergei Glaziev, a representative of the Eurasian Economic Commission, mentioned significant progress in this cooperation since 2019. And he also said that we could cooperate more in integration of information systems, field of technical regulation, veterinary and phytosanitary control, and entrepreneurship development. And also, he mentioned resolving food security issues as a driving force that can take cooperation between these two entities to a new level. In fact, he said the total capabilities of the Eurasian Economic Union for the production of basic food products and mineral fertilizers can provide resources to feed almost 1 billion people. And also, I would like to mention economic cooperation within BRICS. BRICS it is an important association for Russia, both politically and economically, and not only for Russia, but for all its members, emerging economies, and the South African presidency of BRICS has given a serious impetus to the development of this organization. This applies to the political, trade, economic spheres, finance, infrastructure, and Russia's foreign trade turnover with its BRICS partners at the end of last year increased by almost 40% and reached a record of $230 billion. But there was even more increase in the first half of this year. This is a new record. And also what is important for us is that BRICS decided to invite Argentina, Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates to become full members of BRICS, as Cyril Ramaphosa, president of South Africa, said this year, and the membership of the new countries in BRICS will begin already in January, since the 1st of January, 2024. Finalizing my presentation, I would like to discuss a bit what needs to be done more to expand Russian-African economic and business ties. Here I connected the opinions of various people, both representatives of business community and also representatives of scientific community. Like we scientists, we think that particular emphasis should be placed on the development of scientific and technological partnership with Africa, because it is really the niche that Russia can use, because Russia has much to offer Africa in terms of access to modern technologies and quality education, and there is an interest we see on the continent in such exchange of information, competences, and know-hows. Also, it is mentioned that it is crucial to develop integration processes between Eurasian Economic Union and the African Union, which I was already mentioning, and also between the representatives of the business circles of the two sides on the African continental free trade area. Russia plans to encourage interaction between the representatives of small and medium-sized businesses in our countries. But for this, it is necessary to redistribute the budgets of Russian export development institutions and increase the participation of Russian companies in specialized exhibitions and forums in Africa. Also, there is a need to increase Russian expertise in African markets through more active involvement of specialists from analytical centers and scientific organizations. This will help Russian business circles to know more about Africa and to navigate better the realities of the continent. What else should be done? Russian businessmen said that we need more banks that could finance projects of Russian companies in Africa. There is need for leasing companies. There is a Gazprom Bank and its leasing company that playing a positive role, but still there is some need for more. And also there is a project to create a Russia-Africa trading house. Many think that it will be very positive. As for BRICS, many countries expect that will be created a payment system based on national currencies in the near future, and the work is done in this direction. What about future prospects for the Russian African economic cooperation? So, what is important for us is that Africa is a young continent, as I already said, and it accumulates 1/3 of world mineral resources. And our specialists predict that African countries in the near future may make a giant economic leap forward, like China and India did in previous decades, and Russia may be the partner that may help them to succeed in that. Some of our specialists say that we should be partners to overcome together the Western so-called neocolonialism of our times. It is now in the sphere of information, in the sphere of technologies. For Russia, the access to African market is very important because, as Irina Abramova, the head of our institute, said recently, the African market today doubles every 4 years, previously every 5 years. So it is changing and developing very fast. And also a new dialogue format like Ministerial Conference Russia-Africa was created to work between joint summits to step from slogans to practical actions. And we think here in Russia that Russia and Africa must support each other on the way to the fourth industrial revolution. One of the African speakers at the Primakov Readings conference, which I visited just a few days ago, he mentioned that 3 mega projects from Russia that Africa needs are transfer of Russian technologies, help in achieving digital sovereignty, and nuclear technologies. What else is needed to realize all that? Many people say that we need to create new transport and logistic hubs for Russia-Africa trade. Also, helping Africa not only to import and receive grain, but to grow it on the African soil with the help of Russian agro-technologies, know-hows, education in this sphere, and fertilizers. So for Africa to be able to achieve full food security. Also mentioned offering African countries specialized online education like courses on nuclear science, artificial intelligence, and so on. And there are some still problems and obstacles on Russia's way. For example, Russia is the 3rd world consumer of cocoa, but it does not have its own transport terminal for its import. And the nearest one is in Estonia, which is often behaving unfriendly. So this needs to be changed. We need to build more infrastructure for enhancing Russia-Africa trade. And also we should stimulate the creation of joint Russian-African companies to produce more on the African continent, as well as opening our market more for the African goods and services. So I think this is the most what I would like to say on this topic, and I'm now very open and welcome your questions. I will try to answer them. So, and thank you all for your attention.
Thank you very much, Olga. Let's stop the presentation now so we can see you in full.
Okay.
And yeah, stop sharing. And so we have now open mic. If anyone has a question, please raise your hand. I'll give you the mic and you can ask a question from Olga Sergeyevna. Does anyone would like to ask anything? Yes, please. Just a moment.
Меня зовут Рима Флауbeня. So the question I want to ask is just a simple one, to find out if there is no trade going on currently between Russia and Botswana. Because I don't think you actually specifically addressed the
I
issue.
cannot hear you very well, sorry.
Is there any trade going on between Botswana and Russia at the moment? Any significant trade of any sort? Trading with each other.
Yes, I suppose there is a trade between Russia and Botswana, but I think it's not yet up to its full potential. And also, we know that the main export good of Botswana is diamonds. In this aspect, Russia is also a producer of diamonds. So probably this is not, that helps in this aspect. So, but I definitely cannot say too much on that because I don't have much information. So.
Thank you.
But of course, I think for this, it is necessary to exchange more because not many, in Russia, we have a lack of information sometimes on what this or that African country has to offer. So we need to exchange more in the various formats, and I think in future this will happen, and we will try to make our best to do that.
Yes, to enhance the trade. Other question, please? Yes, just a moment.
Dobraya Utra. My name is Leonard, and my question is, who can I get in touch that can assist me with helping me exporting some of our export commodities such as cocoa, chocolate, chai, and coffee. I've got some contacts in East Africa and West Africa. So I think this would be a good opportunity for us to export some of these commodities to Russia. Also that even with the cocoa, I just read that you guys are the third most largest consumers of it. So that's an opportunity. Please get me in touch with someone who I can work with. Thank you. Спасибо.
So as far as I have understood, the question was whom to contact about the increasing exports of cocoa, coffee, and so on. So as far as I understood, so we have a Ministry of Economic Development and also Russian Trade Chamber of Industry and Commerce. So I think contacting representatives of these two structures can help in promoting export, because cocoa is this type of export that Russia is interested, because we are producing a lot of chocolate, and a lot of chocolate is eaten domestically. And so I think this is good direction of increasing cooperation between our two countries. So there is some contact I have already made inserted in the presentation, but you can also contact our institute to receive more detailed information.
Yes, you have the information in your booklet, and also you can contact Olga for us, or when we can assist you in doing reaching the people you need. So, other questions, please? No? Yes, please.
Спасибо.
Спасибо.
That's how far I can go. Just out of curiosity, I just want to know how widely is the Russian language spoken globally?
Could you please repeat the question? I
Okay.
cannot hear very well.
How wide is the Russian language spoken globally
Okay.
in the world?
There are, I think,
This is a question that will be answered during the next meeting. So, Olga Sergeyevna, you may miss. Well,
I
let's thank
forgot the exact number, but there are quite a lot of Russian speakers, Russian language speakers around the world, and they also exist in Africa. And now Russian government would like to do more to promote Russian language studies on the African continent. And we see that this work is being done, it is in progress. So we very welcome Africans to learn Russian, including during the online teaching and learning programs. So this is definitely one of the aspects of our culture that we would like to see promoted on the African continent. This is my answer to this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Спасибо, Olga Sergeyevna. Thank you very much for your presentation, for your time. Thank you. And let's give a round of applause to Olga.
Thank you very much for your attention.
And greetings to Moscow.
Thank you
From
for
Moscow.
inviting me.
Yes. Yes. So now we are planned to have 10 minutes break. Okay, and we start at 12 sharp. The next meeting about Russian language, about Russian history, about Russian culture. So small break, short break, and then we start again. Thank you.
Прям уже смотрит, еще вот
Секунду, у нас здесь звук работает. Тоже сюда.
Это как говорить, да? Мне понадобится, чтобы отходить, нажать, я возьму, хорошо? Один не стоит.
Секунду.
Переключать здесь можно слайды? Начинаем, да? Начинаем. Good afternoon. Can you hear me well? Good. So, building a bridge to the very first lesson, your crash course of Russian. Natalia was practicing Cyrillic with you. She was teaching you Cyrillic, introducing you to Cyrillic. Now, if you can write your name in Cyrillic, in which countries are you good? What do you think? Any suggestions? Well, Russia, definitely. What other countries use Cyrillic? Exactly. Ukraine, Belarus, Serbia, Montenegro, and the Balkans, and Northern Macedonia. Also, Russian is widely popular in the Baltic states, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Here by the Baltic Sea, in all the republics of the former Soviet Union, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Armenia, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan. Russian is widely spoken and very widely understood in use. Now, there is one more country that still uses Cyrillic, and hopefully it will go on using Cyrillic, and it is between Russia and China. This one. Cyrillic is Mongolia. They use Cyrillic. Here you can see Russia on the world map. There was also a question from the gentleman during the previous session, how widely Russian is popular in the world. How many speakers worldwide? Well, the recent estimate is very close to 300 million people. 300 million people speak Russian. But as to the status of Russian language in the world, we'll talk about it a little bit later. So now we are happy that Russia is a state in the eastern part of Europe and in the northern part of Asia. The total square of Russia is over 17 million square kilometers. Now, what's the square of Botswana? Botswana is just under 600,000 square kilometers. I think it's 581 or something like that. So it's roughly 30 times Russia's territory is 30 times bigger. And we know that Botswana is not a small country. The territories are the length of Russia from north to south is 4,000 kilometers. 4,000. And from west to east, 9,000 kilometers. The total length of land borders of the Russian Federation is over 22,000 kilometers. And 14,500 kilometers is on land, and the shoreline, the border line on Russia's shores is 39,000 kilometers. Now, who does Russia border with? In the north and northwest, Russia borders Norway and Finland. Then Russia borders Belarus, the Baltic states, Belarus, Ukraine, Azerbaijan, here, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, China, and North Korea. With the United States, Russia has, same as with Japan, Russia only has a water border. You can see from this physical map, the territory of Russia's territory is washed by 3 oceans: the Atlantic Ocean, the Arctic Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. We also have a lake, which is called the Caspian Sea. But technically, everybody calls it the Caspian Sea, but technically it's a lake. Russia has 10 time zones. So, for instance, if you take a plane from Vladivostok in Russia's Far East to Moscow, the flight is 8 hours. Imagine you take your You begin your trip at 8 o'clock in the morning. When you arrive in Moscow, the time there is same 8 o'clock the same morning. Yes. As to the population of Russia. The population of Russia is just over 145 million people. That's ninth country of the world by population. In Russia, there are over 190 nations, nationalities, smaller groups of people. Russia is one of the founding members of the United Nations. That was in 1945. International Agency for Atomic Energy, the Commonwealth of Independent States, Shanghai Organization of Cooperation, and many other international organizations. Russia has been a UNESCO member since 1954. Russia is a member of the International Monetary Fund and the World Health Organization and the World Trade Organization, WTO. Let me show you some of Russia's symbols. This is the flag of Russia. That's the continent federation. And here, just for your information, is the older emblem of the USSR, the country that preceded modern Russia. And I'm showing it to you specifically to attract your attention to the fact that the Soviet Union had 15 republics that made the Union. And you see the slogan of the Soviet Union, proletariat of all countries united, is written in all the 15 languages, all the Soviet republics. It's not very often when the slogan is repeated in so many languages. The coat of arms of Moscow, of Russia. We are all from St. Petersburg. We are all from St. Petersburg. Yes, St. Petersburg, the second biggest city in Russia. It's also named what is called the cultural capital of the Russian Federation. That's a typical view of Moscow. This is Moscow, the central Moscow, the Red Square. Today and tomorrow. It's St. Petersburg. It's a very well-known view. And this is the north of Russia, the Republic of Karelia, Marina, who is with us. In the orange dress, she is from Karelia. And this slide is here only to show you, introduce you to the natural beauty of this great country. A few words about the constitutional and political structure of the Russian Federation. Well, Russian Constitution presumes that there are three branches of power. The legislature, the executive power, and the judicial. Each of the branches is independent and self-sufficient and acts within their limits stated by the Constitution and laws. And the three branches of the power should not interfere with one another. Russia is a federative state. Therefore, the law strictly divide what is being managed or governed or ruled by the center, that is by Moscow, and what is given to the subjects of the Russian Federation. Some local activities, well, maybe some, not some, of course, almost all economic activities, and even some international activities, because Russia's regions can establish their own links and relations with other countries, regions in other countries. Presidential republic with a multi-party system. And let me give you the picture of our parliament for the years 2021 and 2026. You see, the vast majority of the seats is taken by the United Russia political party on the left. They have, I think, about 320 seats in the parliament, which is, I think, 630 seats. Then we have the Communist Party, which is still very popular, especially with the older generation of people who remember well, like the Soviet Union. Then we have the Socialist Party called Fair Russia, Patriots for Truth. The name is quite nice. So it tells you a lot. Then we have Liberal Democrats, who are neither liberal nor Democrats. They are very, very strong pro-Russia patriots. And we have a new party, which is it's for the first time that since 2021 that they managed to enter the parliament. It's called the New People. The New People. It's, well, we don't know it. We are looking at it. That's important. January 2023, Russia has 29 registered political parties. And out of 29 registered parties, 27 are able to take part in the national election. But you see, the parliament, the Duma, has only 5 parties. In order to get into the parliament, a party must reach the 5% barrier. If 5 or more percent of voters nationwide vote for the party, they get into the parliament. If there is 4.8, for instance, they don't get, and the seats are shared between the winners. And now, let's talk about Russia's nature. As you can see again from the physical map, Russia is a very big place, and climate throughout most of the country is continental. In the northeast, it's maritime. In Siberia and most areas of the Far East, it's very continental, which means it's very, very hot in summers and very, very hot in winters. There is an area that I'm trying to the north of where I'm pointing, where because of the strong cold for many thousands of years, they have a permafrost. What do you know what permafrost is? It's hard to imagine here in Botswana. It's when even during the hot summers, some 50 to 60 centimeters of your land is frozen. Even in June, July, and August, when the temperature might be okay, but covered. This permafrost is a special. Well, it also exists in Canada. Our most important lakes are Lake Baikal. It is the biggest reservoir on planet Earth of fresh water. The biggest. Well, the Caspian Sea is a lake. We have 2 big lakes next to St. Petersburg. One is called Lake Ladoga, and the other one Lake Onega, and they are connected by a river. Of course, Russia has hundreds of thousands of smaller lakes, but if I just start measuring them all, well, that's other things. Now look at the geographical zones of Russia. So, north to south, we have an Arctic desert first, then we have tundra. Tundra, did you know what tundra is? Or tundra? It's not the forest tundra, then forest, steppe, and semi-desert. Semi-deserts, Russia, here in this area, deep green. A very characteristic feature of Russia is when we're talking about mineral resources and all types of resources, is that it has a very comprehensive nature. Russia has almost everything because it is so big. Russia is one of the world's leaders in processing and exporting oil, natural gas, coals, ore, nickel, precious metals, platinum, gold, phosphates, and many, many other very useful things. Now, let me show you some of Russia so that you can have a better idea of what the country looks like. That's a country mansion of the 19th century, northern Russia. Of course, it has been properly restored. Not all country mansions of the 19th century are preserved in this impeccable condition. But this one is. That's central Russia. That's Siberia in summer. Siberia in summer. It's very cold in winter, and it's very hot in summer. But it's always very beautiful. This is the very far east of Russia, very close to Japan. It's an active volcano called Klyuchevskaya. What does it look like? What does it remind you? What does it bring to mind? I think about Fujiyama in Japan. Japan's sacred mountain. It's very similar. You see, it's summertime and there is snow on top of the mountain. I guess it only melts when the volcano is active. Sochi, the coast of the Black Sea. Looks familiar, right? This is, I took this picture this last January. It's subtropical. Very good for lemons, mandarins, oranges, things like that. Same day, I took a 40-minute ride from the seashore into the mountains, being technically within the same town of Sochi. That's up to 40 minutes. About 2.5 kilometers above the sea level. It's a ski resort, a famous ski resort. In 2014, the Winter Olympics was there in Sochi. Yeah, a little bit about, well, non-human missions. This is our Far East leopard. Russia has a great variety of animals and birds. This is the biggest kind of tiger ever found in the world nowadays. The Amur is a big river in the Far East, or Ussuri is another river. So this type of tiger is sometimes called Amur tiger, sometimes It's called Usul tiger. One more picture of them. They may be tigers, the biggest tigers, but they're still cats, right? There are also white tigers that are very nice. And for you to imagine the size, it's a picture from one of the zoos. So the size of the cat. The man is not small. And the cat is very, very, tolerant. He obviously doesn't seem to like it very much, but still, what can I do? Yeah. Another symbol of Russia is our brown bear. They are indeed a symbol of Russia. Actually, we have brown bears in Botswana? No. Yeah. Our brown bears may seem very, very big, but not unless you meet their relative, the polar bear, which is about 3 times bigger than a brown bear on average. They live in the Arctic. They live on ice. They're hunters. And brown bears aren't hunters. Normally, they don't eat meat. Brown bears eat berries and honey. That's what they love. They, they prefer forest raspberry. That's their best treat. So if you're going into the woods in the summer to pick up some forest raspberries, which is more aromatic than your garden raspberry, you have to be very, very careful in Russia because they may be someone else who doesn't like your president, but you take his berries. Wolves all over Russia, and please notice the cup between the pores. Our hair, our fox. What is the fox doing on the snow? What is it? Huh? Hunting who? Katerina, you're right, but hunting who? Hmm? Mice, mostly mice. Because you see, it's a field, so some corn may be left there, then there is snow. Mice is under the snow looking for some corn to eat, and the fox is waiting very patiently, maybe for half an hour, and it can feel or maybe smell the mice there. And then it calculates where it is and makes one high jump, and then with its nose goes right into the snow and gets the mice. And so blind idea is there. And since it's winter time, when in Russia animals are not very fat, but this one looks perfect, to be in perfect condition, must be an excellent hunter. And this is Russian lynx. Our reindeer is very popular, especially in the far east and the far north of the country and in Siberia. And, Black Sea dolphins. They are very friendly. You see people swimming next to them. They're very friendly to the people. And well, very often they save people from sharks. If a shark is nearby, then 1 or 2 dolphins would come to a human being and to make sure that the sharks cannot attack. And since the dolphins always travel in packs and families, the sharks never play with them. They go away immediately because dolphins are very nice only on humans, not on sharks. I'll just close this presentation now and open another one. Marina. Natalia, can you please call Marina? It's technical stuff. Sorry. Вот я другую презентацию я так что это называется
Также вставляем.
Спасибо большое. Мгм. Good. Now I'm going to talk about the peoples and languages of the Russian Federation. Look at this. Russia is very big, like 50% of the population occupied on the territory that is maybe just under 20% of the territory. So 50% of the 145 million people live in the West. 50%, 70 some million people live in the East. It's a disproportionate, which is not very good, of course. This is why Russia's vast plains of Siberia, Far East, and North are scarcely populated. And one of the aims of the government is to make those regions interesting enough for people to move there, to live there, to work there, and develop the regions. Which is not that easy given the harsh climate. Russia is a multinational state, which is reflected in the constitution. Over 190 nations, smaller peoples, live in Russia. Here you can see the main ethnic groups that live in Russia. And I want you, we'll come to that picture again. We'll come back to that picture again, but I want to show you the 10 biggest nationality in Russia.
Moment, sure.
So Russians, over 1 million. Tatars, Chechens, Bashkirs, Chuvas, Avars, Armenians, Georgians, and Kazakhs. Kazakhs, the same people who live in the Republic of Kazakhstan, Russia's neighbor. So, of all those 10 biggest nations in the Russian Federation, only the Georgians and the Kazakhs are under 1 million people. Every nation to the left, however small they might seem here, they're all well over 1 million people. This might be of interest to you. So different peoples of Russia have different birth rates in their communities. Of course, it's related to their economy, their religion, and many climate, many other factors. On average, one Chechen woman has, in 2023, Chechens are here. On average, one Chechen woman has 3.15 babies. One English woman has 3.55 babies on average. One Armenian woman has 2.17, and one Russian woman has 1.78 babies on average. So in the future, those areas where the birth rate is higher have a tendency to become bigger in population. Here we have world language families. Do you know since one belongs to which language family? In Russia, we call it Niger Kardofan. Niger Kardofan. Niger Kardofan, and it's probably, and then it also belongs to the family of Bantu, a Bantuan language. I may be mistaken, but I would like this feedback from you. In Russian. In Russia, we have the Indo-European system, we have the Alsatian system, which is part of the Uralic languages, and we have very many smaller languages that either relate to one of the major language families of the world, or there are some small languages, or linguists call them isolate languages, right? So far, linguists haven't been able to trace their connection to any other language family of the world. So as to the Indo-European language, we have Slavic languages, we have Armenian language, we have quite a few Iranian languages, we have Germanic languages, Romance languages, Greek, and Baltic languages. Among the, well, we have Turkic languages, we have Caucasian languages, Finno-Ugric, and we have some languages belonging to the Mongolian language family. Here's one more illustration of the language families of Russia. So it's quite a variety, and of course, the only state language in Russia is Russian. But every subject of the Russian Federation, there are altogether 89 subjects in the Russian Federation. They are all small states, very similar to the states in the United States of America or Canadian provinces. It's a federative state. They obviously have other languages. They can have 2 or 3 other languages, but Russian still remains their main language, because without Russian language, people from different parts of Russia won't be able to understand each other. And knowledge of Russian is very prestigious in Russia. People try to know it better because good Russian always gives you more opportunities in your professional development, in your education, and many other aspects of life. I want to show you some of the nations and peoples of Russia. And in many ways, we are similar, in many ways, we are different. And I want you to have a look and make your own idea, make your own guesses of what is the diversity in Russia. Chechens live in the northern Caucasus, on the border with Georgia. This is them dancing in their national costumes, but not in the village, not in the village, it's in the city, in the capital. That's again Chechens in Grozny, the capital of the Chechen Republic. And remember, after Russians, they are the second biggest nationality and ethnicity in the Russian Federation. And now we go to the far east and to the north of our far east. This is the Inuit igloo. The Inuit, no, in English, the word is Inuit. In Russian, we used to call them Eskimos, and the French call them Eskimos. So it's made of ice, and strangely enough, it's quite warm in there. It's not ice, it's rather snow. And Russians know that if they build a shelter with snow, they're always warm inside. However strange it may look. That's the Inuit hunters. Not a very tolerant picture, but you know what they're about to do. But still, this is their traditional way of life, and forbidding them their traditional hunting will destroy their national identity and lifestyle. For instance, they are allowed to hunt for whales and walruses in Russia, because that's their for thousands of years they were doing this. If they don't manage to kill a whale, for instance, then, well, in autumn, then the whole village or settlement will have to die of hunger because they have this permafrost. They cannot grow anything. They only eat protein food traditionally. As the nowadays, those small nations, the First Nations of Russia, have and hopefully will always have this license. But if you or me were to come there and ask, can we hunt for walrus or for whale? No, it's a crime, it's a serious crime, we will go to jail, which I think is very good. And I think it's just. This is the Walrus Festival. I don't think the walrus is enjoying the festival, actually, but everybody else is. I took this picture in 1990 in the Chukotka Peninsula. Wherever possible, I try to use my own pictures. Inuit kids, maybe growing up now, and a village club there. Look how people are dressed. This is 1990. It hasn't changed much since then. The Bering Sea, one of the coldest seas in the world. I think you can feel the beauty, the fantastic beauty. It's July, and the temperature is 12 degrees above zero centigrade. That's the peak of the summer. Yeah. That's middle of July. I was wearing a very thick coat when taking this picture. You see, people are dressed very well for July. We now go to the northwest of Russia, to the Republic of Karelia, and you see Karelian ladies in their traditional costumes, and behind you see a church that was built of wood without any nails. That's Russian tradition. What is good if sometimes you have to move it, for instance, to a museum, an open air museum of architecture. It's easy to disassemble it, take the parts and then reassemble it. But you have to be very careful. Lego is a great helper, but this is even more complicated. Another group of Karelian folk musicians. Now we're going close to the Volga River, Kalmykia. They came from Siberia, from East Siberia in the 18th century. Sorry, is this my better? Should have cried before. A bit uncomfortable. So, the Buddhist region of Russia, although it's only a 2-hour flight from Moscow. So we call it in Russia, it is our east, which is not far. Can you imagine a Buddhist region on the border of Europe and Asia, just 2-hour flight from Moscow? You see the architecture, the pagodas. And I was lucky enough to get their bride. Their traditional occupation is cattle, including camels. Tatars live on the Volga, and they are also one of the biggest peoples of Russia. Here you see them with their traditional costumes and traditional sweets. Another group of Tatar people. In Kazan, the capital of Tatarstan. Yakutia. Yakutia is a region in Russia. It's technically related to the Far East. It's East Siberia. Yakutia its territory is slightly more than 4 times bigger than all of Western Europe. 4 times. I met in the airport there, I met a team of ice hockey players, was still junior ice hockey players. I asked them, "Where are you flying?" He said, "Oh, we have this Yakutia Champ Cup. So we are flying to the next district, next municipal district." I asked them, "How far is that? That you have to fly?" "Oh, no, it's not far, it's just 2,000 kilometers." So you have to fly. Yakutia is the world's pole of cold. It's the coldest temperature recorded on Earth was in Yakutia. The town is called Oymyakon. It was 79 below 0 centigrade. 79. I was there in February. At night, temperatures fell down to 63, 64 below 0. But in the sun, during the day, it's quite warm. It's minus 43, 45, 48. That's the Yakutian family in summer. They have extremely hot summers. And you see how they look like. They are Asian, but very nice picture, I think. And that's their spring festival. That's their spring festival. See, the costumes are beautiful. And this is actually 45 degrees below 0, Yakutian Huskies, and I'm driving the Huskies. It's me in the picture. As you can easily recognize the face. And now, talking about different nationalities of Russia, we cannot but mention the Russians. They have been. Do you know who this lady is? You can read it. This is a famous Russian actress, theater and film actress. But you know, where is she now? She is at Mir International Space Station. In 2023, there was the first movie made in space, and she and her operator, they went up there, and the film is called Challenge. Well, in Russian, it's called Vызов. Vызов can be translated both as challenge and call. The idea is she plays a young doctor. A cosmonaut is injured at the international station. He cannot be transported down. He cannot. So they call a doctor, like she has to pay a visit to save the cosmonaut. And she takes a 2-week training course, and then she's transported there. And they manage to save the cosmonaut. That's based on the real events very close to real. And this is Yulia Peresild right there with feeling no gravity at all. Now, our time is about to finish, so I'd rather take your questions, if any, at this point. Tomorrow we'll start to talk about Russia's 1,500 years of history at least. And now, if you have any questions, please.
So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand and I can give you the mic. The colors of the Russian flag, what do they all mean?
Well, thank you for this question. What other flags does it remind you of?
Oh, the color?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, many Slavic countries have those various combinations of those colors. So they are So one source of the colors is the traditional, they have been traditional Slavic colors for many centuries, but it's the Slavic countries like Serbia, other Slovenia, Montenegro, Croatia, they were modeling their flags on Russian because many Slavic nations and nation states in Europe have always looked to Russia as their ultimate protector against the Turks who were attacking them from the south, against the Germans, the Austrians. So they felt, well, Serbs now think that, well, we are, say, 7 or 8 million Serbs, but with Russia, we are almost 200 million. That's the attitude. And the simple story behind the flag is that Peter the Great, I'll be talking about that tomorrow. Peter the Great, our great reformer and emperor, in the end of the 17th and in the beginning of the 18th centuries, he traveled in disguise to Europe. He worked in the Netherlands and he worked in England. And he loved the way of life the Netherlands had at that time. He introduced many Dutch things to Russia. And he also brought the Dutch flag, which he loved. He only changed the order of colors. That's what was behind. There is no official, in Russian constitution, there is no official explanation of the colors. There is no official explanation of the colors. More questions?
If we quickly one last one, why is the bear the national animal?
Well, first of all, many bears. Russia is often compared to a bear. It's very big, not moving very quickly. But like you can tease the bear for a long, long time. But then finally, the last straw, and the bear jumps. And Russians prepare this is the Russian saying, the Russians take a long time to prepare their harness, but they ride fantastically quick. And that's, well, also the bear is a very popular hero of Russian folklore, of Russian fairy tales, of Russian proverbs. I think all this all together makes it one of the symbols of Russia, perhaps the most important animal as a symbol. But thank you, Catherine, for this great question. Здрасте. Меня зовут.
I heard you say that Russia had about, I don't know how many regions, but
89.
But I wanted to, and you said that you just had the legislature and all that. But I wanted to ask, particularly, does it mean that every region comes with its laws that governs that region, or what happens? You also have the High Court or the Court of Appeal, because in Botswana we have just one Court of Appeal and the High Court, and regardless of the districts in the country, we all abide by the jurisdictions of this higher courts I just mentioned.
Thank you for this question. Yes, each subject of the Russian Federation has its own legislation, its own parliament, its own judicial system. But there is the Supreme Court of Russia. There is also the Supreme Court of Appeal. There's also a central arbitration court for business problems and cases and issues. So if you are, first of all, every district, municipal or rural district in Russia has its own court. If you are not satisfied in that court, you go up. You go to the provincial, the subject of the Federation Court, and then they deal with you. If you are not happy again, you apply to the Supreme Court of Russia. Of course, it takes time. But if you don't like what the Supreme Court did, you file a complaint to the Constitutional Court. They don't look at your particular case, but they examine how the Supreme Court and lower courts processed your case. And then they can make a decision they must have a majority in the Constitutional Court. Sometimes it's a very small majority. Say out of 13 people, 8 are for and 7 judges are against. But then it goes as their decision, and those the judges of the Constitutional Court who are not happy with the result, they file their personal opinion on that, which is also attached to the decision, so that lower courts studied and know all the varieties of judicial thinking that is around it. Yeah. The ultimate truth in Russia can be found in Moscow if you're not happy. And many people go all the way. Thank you.
Indian is a Russian immigration policy. As okay, as a comparison to other many Western countries.
Well, thank you for this question.
Lastly, do we have the Russians of African origin, like other Western?
Yeah. Well, first of all, well, thank you for this question. Russia is not a 100% Western country. Well, because we are between East and West, because our territory is so big. Most immigration to Russia now consists, like in many old empires, it consists of the people who used to live in the Soviet Union. It's so-called work migration. People from the former republics of the USSR still come to Russia because they believe that's right, that wages are better and the living standards are higher. For them, for the citizens of the former Soviet Union, it's fairly easy to get a permit to live and work in Russia and to get a Russian passport if they want to. This immigration is particularly big in big industrial centers like Moscow, St. Petersburg, Kazan, and many others. As to the immigration from Africa, for instance, there is no such process. There are individuals, but there are no waves, no big numbers. We have we have Russian Africans. They are mostly those African students who were coming to Russia to study in the 60s, 70s, 80s, and are coming now. Some of them marry in Russia. Some of them take their Russian wives back to Africa. Some of them decide to stay on in Russia. So they have kids who are 100% Russian Africans. The Soviet Union and Russia are very well known in many African countries, except for Botswana. Do you know why? Because there are Russian culture centers, Russian classes all over Africa. Because Botswana never tried to build socialism. And the Soviet Union would help and support those who at least officially declared that we are going to join the socialist world. And the Soviet Union would give the money, the weapons, the oil, whatever, support the countries. And since Botswana has always been independent politically, Botswana has decided to be a democracy right from the start of its existence. So then this is why I think we've lost, say, 40 to 50 years between Russia and Botswana. This only means we have to work harder to build a greater relationship together. And Russia is generally non-racist at all. On YouTube, there is a channel, I think it's called Being an African in Russia. I recommend that you find it. And there are people from different African countries talking about their experience in Russia, problems, life, love, climate, temperature, everything. Yeah?
You could say that I wanted to see more of Russian architecture, the more music and the gymnasium.
If we have the time, next time I have a presentation with all of that. Yes, we'll do that. Certainly. And you'll have a special lecture on Russian music. Well, colleagues, do we have to wind up now? Or we can take a couple of more questions? Yeah.
Добрий день.
Добрий день.
Я зовут Butrano. I noticed that when you were showing us the flags in the coat of arms that St. Petersburg had its own coat of arms, and there was a lot of promotion. I don't know about St. Petersburg. That Moscow isn't actually the capital of Russia. So I wanted to hear more about St. Petersburg, what it has to offer that is promoted more than the capital of Russia.
Yeah, you're right. St. Petersburg used to be the capital of Russia from the very year it was founded, 1703. And it was the capital of Russia until 1918. There was civil war at that time. And there was real danger of Petrograd, as it was called then, be taken by the German and some of the Russian forces against the Bolshevik, the communist government. So Vladimir Lenin, the founder of the Soviet Union, decided to move the capital to Moscow for safety reasons. That's it. But you know, being a capital city of Russia is a great burden. So we are very lucky and happy in St. Petersburg. Thanks God, we are just the cultural capital of Russia. Yeah.
Спасибо.
Пожалуйста.
My question is around the politics in Russia, especially the presidency. I have observed something peculiar with how power is shared somewhat in Russia. Because at some point, President Putin was out of power, and then he managed to get back into power. So I just want to understand the dynamics around that arrangement. And also, there are some, I don't know whether to call them words that are synonymous whenever you hear of Russia. There's this word, the Kremlin and oligarchy, Russian oligarchy. So maybe you can elaborate a bit more on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, honestly, knowing President Putin, I can hardly imagine him being taken, thrown away from power and then coming back to it. He's calculating his actions very, very well. And his team is extremely strong and is very much behind him. So I really doubt, I think those fluctuations, he is more powerful, he is less powerful. Now, they are part of the propaganda war that our brothers Ukrainians, for instance, our brothers Americans, or our British cousins are very eager, are always eager to advance. Just to have a look, you know, just touching here, touching there. Maybe there is something in this rumor, maybe not. So I cannot elaborate on Putin being stronger or weaker. I think he's still, well, he's standing high. As to the oligarchs are very, very rich business people, billionaires, US dollar billionaires. In the first years of independent Russia, since 1991, when our president was Boris Yeltsin, I'll be talking about that hopefully tomorrow. Russia was, well, there was lack of everything in Russia. We didn't have supplies. All Soviet links and ties were broken, and the new ties in the economy were not created yet. So oligarchs had great influence on Boris Yeltsin. He had realized that, and as closer to the year 2000, he managed to push them away from whatever decision making is available to them. Still, even now, when Putin came to power, he destroyed their influence. That was one of his purposes. But in order to understand the business better, 2 or 3 times a year, Putin invites the oligarchs, the richest businessmen, who are in oil, in gas, in diamonds, in energy, in many other things, he has kind of consultations with them, which I think is a very clever thing to do. So there was a short period of time in the 1990s, but oligarchs were really very influential. No. Which I think is one of the best results of Putin's regime. Yeah, go on.
There was a point when Medvedev was president.
I can't hear you. Medvedev was president. Yes. No, that was based on the constitution. In the Russian constitution, you cannot be president more than 2 terms. So Putin started in 2000, and in 2008 he had to go. So he left. Deputy Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev, and a close ally of Putin, was elected president. He was there for 4 years, for 1 term. Then the Constitutional Court has ruled that Putin may return. So he returned. And in 2024, and then the term, because the constitution was changed, there was a new law. And now the presidential term used to be 4 years. Now it's 6 years, like in France, for instance. And now Putin is in his 2nd term according to the new constitution. And the new constitution allows him to stand again in 2024, because I think the new constitution doesn't limit your terms, which I think is not a good idea. We have questions from the internet, from YouTube. Does Russia intend to put in place some immigration programs such as USDV lottery or Canadian immigration program for foreigners? I don't think so. Because when a country wants to stimulate immigration, it means it requires some specialists, experts, or workforce in certain fields. Russia has all that from the republics of the former Soviet Union, who are almost all of them are native Russian speakers, and then come without any problem. They don't require a visa to come. Many of those countries don't require a work permit in Russia. So Russia, I think, at present is pretty satisfied with that. But you've seen the dimensions of the nation. And I told you that the government wants to make people move to the more remote areas. And for that, Russia might invite new immigrants, but living hard in harsh climate isn't very tempting for many potential migrants. With powerful Afro-Russian heroes, Pushkin, Hannibal, that served and contributed a lot in old Soviet Union, why is it just now that Russia is expanding towards Africa and not a long time ago? So as I have mentioned, the case with Botswana is exactly in this question. Russia was not in Botswana, not in South Africa, obviously, but Russia was in almost every other African state, almost every other African state. When I went to university in 1984, I was in a group. We were doing journalism, and there were 15 students in the group. I was their monitor, and only 4 were from the Soviet Union. The rest 11 were from other countries. Of them, 1 was from Yemen, 1 from Afghanistan, all the rest were Africans. So my best friend is Ghanaian for almost 40 years now. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that even though maybe there were no formal relations between Russia and Botswana, but there were maybe not that. But I can think of quite a number of the people that were in Russia from here. I think from this very well. I think it happened the 70s also. So there was still with those informal links, but certainly opportunities were being made available. Some people from
of course. I didn't know about that. Thank you very much. Okay, we have to wind up now because the next class is waiting. Thank you very much for your
Thank you very much.
attention.
Thank you very much for your okay. So, and while we're switching to the next speaker that is going to join us online, I would like to give the mic to one of the participants that would like to share his experience, just a couple of minutes. Yes. So please introduce yourself. Yeah. Может быть, вот сюда. Yeah. Если можно, то было видно.
Okay, can you hear me?
Can you hear me? Okay. So I was a student in Moscow in the Aviation Institute. It's a national research university. And I want to know, first of all, how many of you are here wanting to be students in Russia? Okay. So here, whatever information I'm going to give, because normally you come here with the intention of, okay, what do I learn, how it's going to be, what do I learn, because at the end of the day, what do I benefit? That's what we're thinking about when we come here. So let me make it very simple. When you're a Botswana citizen, you get an e-visa. The Russian law changed in 2021, where you get 30 days stay on that. So if you just want to visit, you can do that. And the embassy, the Russian embassy, the consulate is very friendly. You can go there on Tuesdays and Thursdays from 11 o'clock until 1 o'clock, so 12:30. So you get all your information that side. And even in 2021, there was a Russian law that now allows students to work in Russia on a student visa for a certain number of hours. So if you're planning on, like, if you think DTF is not going to be funding, you can still go there and get a part-time job. It's completely legal, it's completely okay. The other thing about being a student in Moscow is that the metro system, or let me say the public service systems, in Botswana we don't have public service. This is not public service. The Columbia the metro system that connects from one end of town to the other. And Moscow is a city with 11 million people. But still, you can get from one side of the city to the other side of the city, either using metro, either using trams, or using buses. And everything is online and Wi-Fi is free. You get free Wi-Fi in the metro, you get free Moscow Wi-Fi. I think during my time, the mayor was Sergei Sobyanin. Yes, Sobyanin, yes. He still is. He still is. He was re-elected. He was re-elected. Okay, that's great. So the local government, like you mentioned, it's a federation. So there's local governments in every oblast. So even in every city, major cities like St. Petersburg, and I was lucky enough to go to St. Petersburg. And they also have a metro system. But when you're a student, take benefit of this. When you're a student, you apply for a student card, and you can use the metro for way cheaper than everyone else. So you can get across town for basically like in $100, you only pay $100. Let's do that. Oh, by the way, the other good thing about Russia is 1 kula is 6 rubles. So the exchange rate favors us. When you go there, our is stronger. So you can spend money, you will be living in a New York City, but with like low prices. It's really cheap to get food. You have they have this like stands whereby they sell shawarmas, where you can basically on your way to school just stop there, get something to eat, and then keep going. The other thing about the banks. So there's 3 major banks, just like how we have FNB, ABSA, and also we have yeah, Stanbic. So they also have 3 banks. So FNB basically is Superbank, it's like a green one, and then there's Tinkoff, the yellow one, and then there is Tinkoff is like online big banking, but they've got ATMs everywhere. And then the last one is I think of B2B. Okay, yeah, there's B2B as well. So when you get a bank account, make sure you get a US dollar bank account. So that way, when the currency fluctuates, you still have like $1,000 or $1,000, totally the same. So you can have a local currency account, and then you got a US dollar account. So you keep 2 cards with you, and everything is electronic. You know, we have shoppings here, right? They have something called credit stock. You can make a card there, you can get discounts. It's all over the country. But because I only lived in 2 major cities, St. Petersburg and Moscow, I know that there's also a French Achard, right? Yes. The red one, yeah. So there's availability of everything that you need. You don't have to worry about like it's more than what you get to experience Europe, even the airport. Like they didn't show you the side, but I'm pretty sure there's a presentation with all that. When you're in St. Petersburg, when you're there in winter, it'll be like 11 o'clock, be like, no, look up in the sky and they see some light. You know, yeah, it's really beautiful. And you can walk there with your phone out and go to he mentioned something about racism. Let me say something. Russian people are curious, but they're very respectful. I was in Russia once, and also the majority of Russians don't speak English. I was speaking, everyone knows dynasty. First, we don't know dynasty. There was a Russian lady speaking dynasty. And I said something quirky about it to my friend was from South. So we were speaking English, obviously. And they replied to us in English. And then she explained to us how Russians are reserved. You can find like there's so many people in the metro, like off on the streets, but no one's gonna come and like the conversation with you. That does not mean that they don't like you or something. It's just that they are reserved to speak. See, and even when they know the language that you speak, they want to get close to you when they get the first. So don't be shy. You don't want to have an accent and try to say something, so they'll just keep reserved. And they're curious, so it's not like maybe for some of them it's the first time I've seen someone. So yeah, it is. Because they're not that many Americans in Russia, or actually any in Russia. Like the regions extend, even people from those regions are like doing work in Russia and whatnot. Like most of the Czechs or even people from CIS countries, like all the former Soviet republics, like as in after breaking up Russia between Russia and the other countries between the countries. I think it's all CIS countries, right? So these countries, they have really lax immigration laws, so they come to work in Russia. And then they speak Russian. But they are foreigners who speak Russian. We are foreigners who don't speak Russian. So it's not easy for us to assimilate as it is for them. So it's not like they hate us. It's just that they're curious and they don't know how to converse, but they're really friendly. You will have an amazing time. If you're interested in learning more about being a student in Russia, you can reach me. I'll be there after this event, and then we can discuss. My only advice is, if you're planning on learning, don't listen to a lot of propaganda that you hear online. Because I already know myself. And it's not as it seems, it's much better than it. So if there's any questions, let me know. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. Спасибо, Миша. Спасибо большое за thanks. I switched to Russian, sorry. After such a presentation. Thank you very much for your words, kind words about Russia. And now, give me a few minutes. I would like to introduce our next speaker. And I'm really sorry we are a bit late. So, Alexander Юрьевич, я прошу прощения за нашу небольшую задержку, but we are really excited to be here and listen to participants as well. So, I'd like to introduce you Alexander Юрьевич Желтов, Doctor of Philology, Professor of the Department of African Studies in St. Petersburg State University. Alexander Yuryevich, let's share the presentation now so that you could start.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Could
okay,
you please
and do you see the presentation now?
Yes. Yes, we see the presentation.
Okay,
Could you switch to the full screen, please? Yes. Perfect. Thank you very much, Alexander.
Let me just try to scroll it. Does it work, right?
Yes.
Do you see this? Do you see the slides changing?
Yes, it is changing.
Okay,
if
good.
Everything is fine. You can start now. Well, listen to you. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Well, first of all, thank you very much for invitation. It's an honor for me to present some facts about African studies in Russia. And if just to introduce myself briefly, I would say that my first African language, which I can speak actively, is Swahili. And so my main field of interest is Swahili linguistics and Bantu linguistics. But besides that, I also managed to work in the field trips in Cote d'Ivoire with Mande languages and in Nigeria with Adamawa languages. So I would say that to a certain extent, I'm interested in many African languages and work as a typologist and a comparative linguist as well. And besides, well, just linguistic stuff, I also deliver such lectures as the Introduction to African Studies, Russia and Africa in Modern World, the basic concept of African studies, and so on. So I was asked to say some words about African studies in Russia, and in my presentation, I'm going to show a brief overview of the history of African studies in Russia with some special reference to St. Petersburg, where the first academic institutions in this field were established, and that is the place where I have been working for all my academic life for, I guess, almost 40 years since I began as a student at the Department of African Studies. As the previous speaker, I entered the university in '84. So since then, I'm somehow involved into studies of Africa. And I will also try to analyze the specifics of African studies in Russia in historical perspective and maybe in modern times. First, I would like to mention some important characteristic features which can describe the specifics of African studies in Russia. First, as you know, Russia had and has no colonies in Africa. That's why I would say that it hadn't any special pragmatic interests, and that is why African studies in Russia were mostly based on academic and research interests. At least I'm sure about St. Petersburg African studies. And another important point is that we have a rather long and heterogeneous tradition of African studies. Here, I would like to discuss one citation, which I like very much because, well, to my mind, I could even use it as a sort of epigraph for Russian studies, or I would say for a right attitude to Africa. Here, it is the memorandum of Russian imperial minister resident in Abyssinia, Konstantin Lishin. You can understand that is a rather high rank officer in Russian embassy, dated June 12, 1902, regarding the possibility of patronage of the Russian government over the commercial society organized there by Nikolai Leontiev, who was the former Russian army officer, and the legality of this society was rather dubious. And so the answer to the question from the emperor, what should we do with this society of this high-rank officer Konstantin Lishin, was our exploitation of the wealth of the equatorial provinces without a legitimate right to do so could have had some material success. But it would have dealt a terrible blow on our moral impact on Abyssinia. In addition, the imperial government, guided by the principles of legality and justice, cannot allow the violation of these principles by the society under its patronage. I think that this phrase is important, and I would say that it can be even included into some textbooks for African studies, or maybe even for diplomacy. Because we certainly should distinguish some tactic interests which can give rather fast success, but could be strategically wrong. At some conferences, sometimes we have a discussion answering the question, where was the policy of Soviet Union more successful, in Africa or in Eastern Europe? And rather many, or at least quite a few colleagues, consider that certainly the policy of Soviet Union in Eastern Europe was much more successful than in Africa, because Soviet Union took a control practically over different spheres of life in these countries. And as for Africa, it was sometimes just a sort of help without any special economic profit. And so that is why they consider this policy to be unsuccessful. But I would say that maybe tactically that is true, but strategically that is not true, because as we can see now, in rather many countries of Africa, the attitude to Russia is rather good, and unfortunately, we can't say the same about Eastern Europe. So I would say that strategy is much more important, and I would say even profitable at the end than just some tactic privileges. Some historical dates. It was still 1723 when the Russian Emperor Peter the Great, you discussed his figure in previous presentation, sent the first Russian expedition to Africa. His idea was to reach Madagascar, where there were some pirate republics there at that time. And it was the expedition under the command of Vice Admiral Daniel Wilster, but actually this expedition failed because it got into storm in Baltic Sea and had to return back. But maybe certainly it is a failure, but maybe it is a good sign because it means that Russia didn't take part in any colonization of Africa. And then the next dates are mostly concerned with some academic interest. Mikhail Lomonosov, who is often considered the father of Russian science, the first very famous Russian scholars specialized in many fields of science, he was interested in Khoi languages and in original Ethiopian writing system. In 1787, 1789, the comparative dictionaries of languages and dialects appeared. It was a huge volume, and it contained the data from 33 African languages. At least they were mentioned there. Certainly, it was not the scientific analysis, but the languages were mentioned, such languages as Coptic, Fula, Wolof, Congo, etc. In 1827, Professor Dorn began teaching the Gaz language, Old Ethiopian language with very long written tradition at Kharkov University. In the second half of the 19th century, it is the time for Russian expeditions to Africa, for instance, by Kovalevsky, Junker, Yeliseev, Bulatovich, and a little bit later by Gumilev. And it is also the development of semitological, you can see the main names dealing with this field, and Egyptological studies at St. Petersburg State University, which I am representing now. Here, you can see the portrait and the map of the expedition by Vasily Junker. I chose just this figure first because he published 3 volumes describing his trip, and besides that, he explored the regions which were not explored by anyone else at that time, and made some important maps about the basins, the sources of Congo and Nile rivers basins. And certainly we should understand and remember that when we try to speak about some travelers and some discoveries of some places in Africa, we should remember that these places had been discovered long ago. And these places were inhabited by Africans, and certainly they know quite well about these places. But still, I would say that to make the information about distant regions of Africa available for European science is also an important fact, even taking into account the fact that it is not the real discovery. It is just the relative discovery for Europe, but not for Africa. Now, another famous figure is Nikolai Gumilev. He also made rather important trips, mostly to Ethiopia. Here you can see the picture, the portrait, and the map again. And another interesting fact about this person is that he was a great Russian poet, not just the traveler to Africa. And I would say that his influence to Russian intellectuals or Russian reading audience was rather important, and he was for Russian culture maybe the figure similar to Rudyard Kipling, who brought quite a lot of his knowledge about India to England, to Great Britain. So Gumilev brought the knowledge, his knowledge about Africa to Russian audience, and mostly in the form of poems which he wrote in the beginning of the 20th century. Now, another important figure is Dmitry Alderogi. He is sometimes considered the father or the founder of the African studies in Russia or Soviet Union at that time, because Alderogi lived during the Soviet times. He died in 87. And I would say that this figure is very important because he was maybe the first scholar who devoted practically all his research interest exactly to Africa. And he was a specialist in many fields. He was trained as an Egyptologist, but then he switched to Africa and made quite a lot in different fields such as ethnography, linguistics, history of Africa. And besides that, he was an organizer of the science, and he established the first specific institutions dealing with Africa in Soviet Union. Another important date, 27 and 28, that is the time when Dmitry Alderogi made a trip or a sort of internship in Germany, Belgium, and the Netherlands. And he also attended Dietrich Westermann's seminar on African languages. Dietrich Westermann was one of the most famous scholars working on African languages at that time. It is important because I would say that since then, African studies in Russia at least tried not to be restricted just by the borders, and they tried to be included into the world research process. I'm sure that that is very important for the science. Now, the next date, 1929. That is the year of the establishment of the Department of Africa at Kunstkamera. Now it is called the Museum of Anthropology and Ethnography. That is the oldest Russian museum, established in 1714. So it was established also by Peter the Great. And up to now, that is one of the most important museums in Russia, and its expositions show different cultures, not just Africa, but also India, Southeast Asia, America. I mean, the the culture of the indigenous people of America, of Russian North, and Europe, and so on. And then the program, it is also the year when the program to study the socio-economic problems in Africa appeared in Moscow. And here at the picture, you can see the building of Kunstkamera, the building of the oldest Russian museum. Now, then the year 34-35 was the year when the Department of Semitic Languages was renamed the Department of Semitic Hamitic Languages, and under the initiative of three very famous professors, Alexander Riftin, Nikolai Yushmanov, and Dmitry Alderogi. And this change of the name was not just the change of the name, but also it was the sign when the first recruitment of students learning African languages and cultures was carried out. And Amharic, Hausa, Swahili, and Zulu began to be taught at that time. So I would say that this is the year of the beginning of Russian University African Studies. And the next year, 44-45, it is the establishment of the Department of African Studies. Until the beginning of the 50s, it was called the Department of African Studies and Egyptology, and now Egyptology went to the Special Department of Ancient East, and now we are existing for almost 80 years now as the Department of African Studies. Now the university is now called certainly not Leningrad, but St. Petersburg. Leningrad was the name of St. Petersburg during the Soviet time. Here you can see the building where the Faculty of Asian and African Studies situated, and certainly in this building there is also the Department of African Studies. Here you can see the chairs of the department, you can see that they are not very numerous. So the first chair was Nikolai Yushmanov. He was a very famous specialist in Semitic languages, and I would say that he symbolized the tradition which showed that African studies in Russia originate from the very old and good tradition of Oriental and classical philological studies. Then this is the figure of Dmitry, the portrait of Dmitry Alderogi. I have already talked about his importance, and he was the chair of the department for more than 40 years and made quite a lot to develop the African studies, the studies of African languages, history, and cultures in the country. The next chair was Andrei Zhukov, who was the specialist in Swahili, in language, in all Swahili manuscripts, in African languages, and also made quite a lot to continue, for instance, the international connections, the international cooperation, which allowed for us to be included into the world African studies process. Now, I would like to mention some important, at least to my mind, points which can characterize African studies exactly in St. Petersburg. First, as I have already mentioned, they are based on classical tradition of Oriental studies. And that is why the reliance of classical analysis of texts was very important. And that is why the first languages which were taught and studied were the languages which had written tradition even before colonization process. For instance, Amharic, Swahili, and Hausa. But then, certainly, Russian scholars understood that we shouldn't study just the cultures for which we can find some written tradition, because it is just a part of Africa. And since that moment, the special attention began to be paid to languages, ethnography, and oral tradition of African people. Then, another point which could be of interest is a certain theoretical freedom during the Soviet times. You know that actually we have that time we had a dominating ideology which was called Marxism-Leninism, but the classics of Marxism-Leninism did not write about Africa, almost didn't write at all, or at least very, very little. And so it's just left for us a special space to feel free, you know, in our studies and research. Study of traditional society, which was a very characteristic point of Leningrad School of African Studies, allowed relative independence from dominant public discourse. Then I also mentioned that already, openness to world science despite Iron Curtain. At least it was an attempt still to have some context with colleagues to read the literature which is published not just in Soviet Union but in other countries as well. Then another point I would say is not actually so pleasant, because for Russian scholars it was very hard to get to Africa during the Soviet times. Certainly some colleagues could work there as interpreters, translators, or officers in some organizations, but it was very hard, for instance, to organize the special research, the special field work, special expedition, and so on. But still, point number seven, I would say that St. Petersburg represents the unique African cluster, which includes university department, academic institution department, and the museum expedition. I think that in the world, we can have quite few centers which can be compared with that. Maybe Paris, London, Hamburg. Maybe I forgot a couple of other centers, but still they are not numerous. And when I spoke about the theoretical, the interest of theoretical issues, I would also like to mention, for instance, Russian scholar, Africanist specialist in social organization of African societies, Nikolai Girenko. I would say that some of his ideas are really of theoretical interest, especially taking into account that in the world of humanities, we don't have quite a lot of the so-called truths which could be accepted by everybody. For instance, the specialists in science have. They have quite a lot of things which can't be discussed. They are just, well, are considered as the starting point for further research. And as for humanities, I think that we are not quite lucky with these truths. And I would stress that African studies still tried to offer some of the important concepts which could be discussed as a sort of general concepts accepted by humanities in general. Here I try to show, and to tell the truth, I can't say that these pictures are really very good. I try to show the panoramic view of the whole of Africa, where the exposition about African cultures is represented. But believe me, in reality, everything looks much better and much more interesting than here on the slide. Then, another important year, speaking about not just Africa, certainly, but also African studies in Russia, was the so-called Year of Africa, 1960. I would say that this year was important for the appearance of very important institutions dealing with African studies in Moscow. As if in St. Petersburg, all the dates are mostly connected with just academic routine, I would say that in Moscow, as we can see, this Year of Africa opened much greater opportunities for new institutions. So, for instance, just 1 year before that, when maybe just a few African countries got the independence, the Institute for African Studies of Russian Academy of Science was established, and the first director was Ivan Potechin. Then, 1960, the Department of African Studies was established in the Institute of Asian and African Countries of Moscow State University. So the first head was Natalia Okhotin, and now for many years this department is headed by Nelly Gromova. By the way, both of them are graduates of St. Petersburg, of Leningrad that time, university, and certainly we feel a sort of pride that the department in our university, I mean the Department of African Studies, appeared 15 years earlier than the same department appeared in Moscow. Then, 1965, the Department of African Languages, the specific department dealing exactly with linguistics and languages in the Institute of Linguistics, appeared, and it was established also by Natalia Okhotina. For many years, it was headed by very famous scholar Viktor Vinogradov. And finally, I would say another very important center, which is specialized in history, Center of African Research in the Institute of World History of Russian Academy of Science, organized and up to now headed by academician Professor Apollon Davidson. Here you can see the pictures of this very important institution. Certainly, we shouldn't believe that all the buildings belong to African departments, unfortunately. Just at the first picture, I mean the Institute of Africa, that is really the building of the institute. And as for the other buildings, they are the buildings for the institutes in general, and the departments take just, well, several rooms there. Now, some words about the academic or university programs which we have in St. Petersburg State University. At the moment, we have 4 programs dealing with African studies. And so we accept students every year for just one program. For instance, 1 year Languages and Cultures of West Africa House, the second year Mandan, and so on. Every moment we still have all the programs filled with students. For instance, the 4th year students now study Ethiopian studies, the 2nd year students study Hausa, the 3rd year Mandan, and the 4th year Swahili. We also have some master programs and even we offered recently the program in English language dealing with African languages and cultures. And it is important that we do study African languages as well. For instance, Amharic and Ge'ez, or ancient Ethiopian, are studied and are taught at the specialization in Ethiopian studies. Bambara and Maninka, they are Mandan languages, so they are studied in the program Languages and Cultures of West Africa Mandan. Then Hausa is studied, Hausa and Nigerian culture is studied in another program, and the program Languages and Cultures of East Africa, Swahili, study Swahili and Kinyarwanda language as well. And besides that, Arabic is taught as an additional language in all programs. It is important because, for instance, for Hausa and Swahili, they used an Arabic script before they switched to Latin script. And Amharic is rather closely related to Arabic genetically as a language. And even for Mandan region, which is Muslim mostly, Arabic is also worth studying. But certainly our curricula are not restricted just by studying the languages. Here I mentioned the main subjects which we try to teach. African oral tradition, Ajami script, that is the old Hausa script for Western Africa in Arabic script. Comparative and historical study of Bantu languages, economic state systems and current situation in African countries, ethnography of Africa, geography of Africa, history, African literatures, introduction to African studies, methods and approaches in African linguistics, Nko script, that the special original script used by some Mande speakers, and this was original African system of writing. Political anthropology of Africa, social anthropology of Africa, and African art. Here, I would like to show some slides dealing with the field work. As I have already said, during the Soviet time, well, I would say the systemic expeditional work was very hard to organize, but I would say since the late 90s, or maybe just in the very beginning of the new century, the linguistic field work, mostly linguistic field work in Africa, began rather active. There were several expeditions. For instance, for many years, we have an expedition headed by Professor Valentin Vidrin, and they deal with Manda languages. They described quite a lot of Manda languages which were under-described or even non-described at all. And my first field work in Africa was within the framework of this expeditional trip. But here you can see the example of my expeditional trip to eastern Nigeria, to Adamawa province, where I tried to work with Adamawa languages. This is the family of the languages, a lot of which are not described at all. And here, I would say that this picture, this photo is not really very picturesque, because when we try to, for instance, say somebody, to tell somebody that you went for a field work for an expedition to Africa, you are supposed to show some beautiful pictures of some jungle, of some interesting traditions, of some rituals and so on. But usually linguistic expedition looks like that. Not very romantic, but it is the most effective way to describe the languages. I need a laptop, I need a microphone, dictaphone, I need a very good, and first of all, I need a very good language assistant to help me, a lot of paper to make notes, and so on, and electricity certainly. And so it looks like that. That is, I would say, a very happy variant of linguistic field work. But I managed to make some also ethnographic, I would say ethnographic trips as well. Here I'm with Hadza Hunter. Hadza is an ethnic group living in northern Tanzania, not far from the lake Eyasi. They are still hunters and gatherers. And besides that, they use the language with click sounds. I understand quite well that for the Botswanians there is no need to explain what click sounds mean. You know that quite well because some Botswanian languages do use these sounds. But for Tanzania, which is rather distant from this South African region of the languages with click sounds, it is a very rare thing, and I wanted to record them and then to show the students and so on. And by the way, we usually, for the people who are not familiar with the languages with click sounds, when we try to describe them, it looks like a sort of something very exotic. But I don't like the word exotic because it is too relative. We believe to be something to be exotic if we just are not familiar with that. And certainly those things which are very common for us can look exotic for the representatives of other cultures. And so when I explain the students that there is no so much exotic in these click sounds, I usually tell the story that, for instance, when we play with babies, we can put the baby on the knee and make some movement and do the sounds like. I think that it is somehow similar to click sounds, and it is Russian language still. And certainly we just try to imitate the sound which the horse can make, and that is just in order to entertain the child. And for instance, if I say something like, it means it's well similar to another series of click sounds, and it means that I'm not satisfied with something, that I'm a little bit angry, and at least I don't like something which is happening around. So we can use these sounds, but they are not a part of our phonological system. Here, this is a very lucky case for me. I managed in Nigeria, in Adamawa province, I managed to visit the fest which was organized as an initiation ceremony. And here I am pictured with the king or the chief of Nyong people. These are people who invited me to take part in this initiation ceremony. And here is just a part of that. Here it is very interesting that these girls and women are considered to be contemporaries, those their actual biological age is evidently different, but it shows that social age is not necessarily the same as the biological age, and here they perform a sort of special dance devoted to this initiation procedural ceremony. Here, some words about publications. I would say that one very important fact is that we publish quite a lot of books about African studies in general. I mean, both in Russia and in St. Petersburg. But the most part of these books are published in Russian because that is our national language and that is the language which we all speak. And certainly quite a lot of literature are published in this language. But we understand that our efforts and our research could be of interest, or at least for us it could be interesting to get some impact or feedback from the scholars from other countries, from Africa, from Europe, from the United States. And that's why we tried to establish the project publishing some periodicals in English. The first St. Petersburg Journal of African Studies, it appeared first in '93, and unfortunately only 6 issues appeared because it was very complicated at the time economically, and so these 6 issues still are of interest, but the journal stopped. And now since 2020, together with Moscow colleagues from the Institute of Linguistics, we decided to organize another periodical with 4 volumes per year, not very huge volumes, but still 4 volumes per year, it is called Language in Africa, and it is devoted not just to linguistic issues, but to the notion of language in a very wide range. For instance, sociolinguistics, ethnolinguistics, literatures, manuscripts, oral traditions, folklore, etc. So very welcome to take part if you have some interesting research. Now Language in Africa is still functioning. Then now I'm going further, and I'm approaching the end of my presentation. And I would like now to switch from more factual data to some, I would say, to some more conceptual things, and to some maybe even philosophical questions. For instance, why should we study Africa, for instance, in Russia, which is very distant, or at least seems very distant from Africa? And first of all, I would stress that it is very important. When we ask somebody why, for instance, we should study Africa, a very popular, at least, well, at some levels, the very popular answer is that Africa has a lot of natural resources, and we should be able to cooperate in order to explore these natural resources. Well, Africa does have a lot of natural resources, but I would say that the aim of African studies is the understanding African culture and people, and the creation of a sort of empathy to African cultures, but not the exploitation. That is not what we are dealing with. And I try to explain my students about that. So another point, there are 54 states in Africa. That is more than a quarter in the world. I mean, more than a quarter of the countries included into the United Nations. And there are about 2,000 languages, and this is about 1/3 of the world languages. And certainly, if there are so many countries, there are so many languages, cultures, and I would say certainly the problem of relationships between the ethnic groups or people and that languages is not very easy. But still, I would say that 2,000 languages means that there are not less than 2,000 cultures on the continent. And certainly, if there is an object, there should be somebody who study that. Okay, but then another important point is the following one. In modern globalized world, and do we like it or not, don't, but I think that it is globalized, in every country, to my mind, there should be a considerable group of people who can understand the others, those who are not similar, the other people, languages, cultures. And I would say it is not a sort of luxury.
Все в порядке, Александр Юрьевич, продолжаем. Единственное, что у нас уже совсем мало времени, если можно, то...
Да, я заканчиваю. Я заканчиваю скоро. So I would say that it is not a sort of luxury. It is very important for the real survival. And I would say that the Russians should be able to understand the Botswanian and vice versa. We need people with multidimensional vision of the world. And one more point. I am sure that no problem can be distant now or strange nowadays. The problems of Africa are the problems for all now, and our world became too small to ignore that. Here, I would say just the picture from Fragile State Index. And here you can see that the situation with a lot of red color on African map, which means that there is quite a lot of fragility on African political map. And 60 from 50 most fragile states, 36 are from Africa. But here you can see, I would say, a very hopeful green spot, and exactly this green spot is Botswana. And I put this map not just in order to show that there are some real problems which are important not just for Africa, because this disbalance can disbalance not just Africa, but the world on a whole. And I would say that maybe the of those countries who are really successful, and here we can see that Botswana seems, or at least looks, according to these figures, looks rather successful. It ranks only, as far as I remember, 122 on the scale of fragility. So it is very good. So the first number is the worst, yes, and so if it is the number 122, it is good. And maybe we should analyze what is right about the organization of life in Botswana, and we maybe could imply it for the situation in other countries as well. So certainly there are some other rather successful countries as Ivory Coast, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, Ghana, Gabon, Namibia, and some countries as Somalia are not really successful. And I would say that the fact that, for instance, in many African countries, there are a lot of different ethnic groups and so on, it can explain some failures. Because, for instance, Somalia is a very rare African country which is monolingual. They all speak Somali language, certainly different dialects, but still that is the most fragile country in the world now. Then, I would like to say that now we live in the world which really lack some sorts of humanitarian truths. I tried to mention that earlier. And I would say that this lack of humanitarian truths is becoming rather critical now. Here there is a citation which is usually attributed to Claude Lévi-Strauss, maybe the most influential anthropologist of the 20th century. And in the middle of 20th century, he wrote this phrase: the 21st century will be the century of social sciences or be not at all. And actually, I would say that now the 21st century came, and I would say that we feel that actually the 21st century brought quite a lot of problems, and without some humanitarian research and humanitarian concepts, it is very hard to deal with these numerous problems. Then I would say that politics should not be geo, it should be human. I, in fact, don't like the term geopolitics because, to my mind, neither the subject nor the object of politics could be geo, the land or the territory. That is misleading and wrong, because the subjects and the objects of the politics or policy should be human, and that is important. And to understand the others now, I mean to understand in a cultural, in a linguistic, in a social way, is not a wish nowadays or a sort of luxury. It is a need. And learning each other's languages and cultures is a way to that. Now, thank you very much for the attention. Thank you very much for visiting this event. And I tried to say thank you in Setswana. Just check if it's okay. Kia le Boga. Thank you.
Спасибо большое, Александр Юрьевич. У нас совсем немножко времени уже осталось. Может быть, один или два вопроса. So if we have one or two questions, maybe four.
Да, вы знаете, я хотел бы сказать, что я хорошо слышу микрофон, который у модератора и у спикера, а вот то, что происходит, вопросы из зала, я слышу очень плохо. Может быть, повторите тогда мне с председательского места.
Sure.
So I just ask to repeat the questions because I can't hear quite well from the audience. Sorry.
Is there a question for Alexander Yuryevich that you may ask? If not, then Alexander Yuryevich, thank you very much for the presentation, for your time, and for speaking African languages today. Unfortunately, we have to finish it right now because we ran out of time. I would like to thank you again, and so let's give a round of applause to our speakers.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak about African studies. That is my pleasure.
I would like to invite my colleagues here for the closing remarks for the day, because We are finishing our first day of the project Russian language in Africa, the way of friendship and cooperation.
Dear participants, thank you. We are happy that you came and to our event, and we will be back to you tomorrow. Yes? Yes.
Dear students, because for me, you're students, I'm very happy to hear that you start speaking Russian. That's just great. Yes, and don't forget about your homework, of course. See you tomorrow, and we'll continue speaking Russian.
Thank you so much for your time with us, for your attention, for your questions. We hope not to disappoint you tomorrow as well. A few remarks about the contents of today. There were many questions about Russia, about education in Russia. Thank you very much, dear friend, for your first-hand experience, sharing your first-hand experience. To understand what it is like to learn or live in Russia, just want to mention just one fact. There is a major international university in Moscow, which takes a few thousand students every year. It's called Russian International Friendship of Nations University. It's for foreigners. Russians also study there, but it's mainly for foreigners from Africa, Asia, Latin America, other parts of the world. Guess who it is named after? It has always been for 60 years now. It's named after Patrice Lumumba, the Congo leader. So it's a major university in Russia International. So you see how high Africa stands in our priorities. And one more thing, do we have people from the academic community here? Great. The thing is that there were questions about Russian language, courses, whatever. And if there is an academic institution here, private or state, doesn't matter, that is really interested in establishing a Russian connection, a Russian language course, a room or class of Russian. So I'm here with my colleagues from the Alpha Dialogue Education Center, but I also work for the Ruski Mir Foundation, is in the Russian world, and it is same as the British Council, like the American Councils for Foreign Languages, like Confucius Institute from China, like Cervantes Institute in Spain. We give grants and money for establishing Russian, promoting Russian language abroad. So you may contact me if you are interested. You can contact me through Alpha Dialogue, of course. Well, thank you so much, and sorry for taking your such a long time.
Dear colleagues, dear friends, may I say, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart that you came today and that this meeting was possible. And we're really waiting for you tomorrow because we will dance, hopefully, drink tea and eat Russian sweets. But we also will know more about Russian culture, and we will know more about your culture as well. So thank you very much, and we invite everyone to stand here with us to make a photo for the first day. Okay, so we invite everyone for the photo together. Here, please come, and that will be the first day for today. Yes. Yeah. So I think, yes, please.
Please come closer to the screen.
I just wanted to know about thank you very much. Can see that. So how long?
Our lunch and tea time in Russia is usually Tuesday, 2 o'clock. Come here.